I watched her walk through that door, not the woman I'd been waiting for, but the one who would change everything. What happens when the worst night of your life becomes the beginning of something you never saw coming? When rejection turns into opportunity and a stranger's bold move rewrites your entire future. This is the story of one man, one empty chair, and one woman who saw something nobody else did. Stay with me until the very end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain had started just after sunset, turning Congress Avenue into a river of reflected neon and blurred headlights. Daniel Hayes sat in his decade-old Honda Civic, parked 3 blocks from Bella Notte, watching the digital clock on his dashboard tick closer to 7:30. His hands gripped the steering wheel even though the engine was off, knuckles pale against the worn leather. He was 34 years old, and this was his first date in 3 years. The thought made his stomach twist. 3 years since Rebecca died. 3 years of waking up alone, of making breakfast for one small person who looked more like her mother every day, of learning how to braid hair from YouTube videos and failing spectacularly. 3 years of well-meaning friends telling him it was time to get back out there, as if dating were some kind of exercise routine he'd neglected. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Emma's already asleep. Take your time tonight, sweetheart. You deserve this." Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. His 6-year-old daughter was safe with her grandparents for the weekend. He had shaved. He had put on the navy blazer Rebecca had bought him for their anniversary 4 years ago, before the cancer, before everything fell apart. He had downloaded the dating app his coworker Marcus had recommended, swiped through dozens of profiles with a sense of profound disconnection, and somehow ended up matching with a woman named Sarah Chen who worked in marketing and liked old movies. Their conversation had been easy, comfortable. She had a warm sense of humor and hadn't seemed put off when he mentioned having a daughter. After a week of messaging, she'd suggested meeting at Bella Notte, a cozy Italian place in the warehouse district that she said made the best carbonara in Austin. "You can do this," Daniel told himself. "It's just dinner, just conversation, just being a normal person for 2 hours." He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror one last time, ran a hand through his dark hair, and stepped out into the rain. Bella Notte occupied the ground floor of a converted brick warehouse, its windows glowing amber against the wet pavement. Daniel could hear jazz music drifting through the door as he approached, something slow and melancholic, a saxophone weaving through the sound of rain. He stepped inside, shaking water from his jacket. The restaurant was exactly as Sarah had described, intimate without being pretentious, with exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from black cords, and mismatched wooden tables that looked salvaged from different decades. The smell of garlic and fresh bread made his stomach rumble. He realized he'd been too nervous to eat lunch. A hostess appeared, young, probably 22, with sleeve tattoos and a genuine smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Hayes," Daniel said. "Table for 2 at 7:30. She checked her tablet, then nodded. "Right this way." She led him to a corner table near the back, away from the main flow of traffic. 2 chairs, 2 place settings, a small candle flickering between them. The table next to his was occupied by an older couple who looked like they'd been married 40 years, sharing a bottle of wine and finishing each other's sentences. On his other side, a group of young professionals celebrated someone's promotion with excessive enthusiasm. Daniel sat down, facing the door. He wanted to see Sarah when she arrived. The hostess handed him a menu. "Your server will be right with you. Can I get you started with anything to drink?" "Just water for now," Daniel said. "I'm waiting for someone." "Of course." She smiled and walked away. Daniel pulled out his phone, 7:28 p.m., 2 minutes early. He opened his messages with Sarah, scrolling back through their week of conversation. Her last message had come that morning. "See you tonight. Can't wait," he'd replied. "Looking forward to it. I'll be the nervous-looking guy in the navy blazer. I'll be the one trying not to trip in heels," she'd written back. Daniel smiled at the memory, then set his phone on the table, screen up so he'd see if she texted. He studied the menu without really reading it, too aware of his own heartbeat, too conscious of every person who walked through the door. At 7:35, a woman entered alone, blonde, wearing a red dress. Daniel's pulse jumped, but she walked past him to meet someone at the bar. At 7:42, another woman arrived, dark-haired and laughing into her phone. Not Sarah. At 7:50, Daniel sent a text. "Hey, I'm here at the corner table and back. No rush. Take your time." The message showed as delivered. Then read. No response. By 8 o'clock, the server had returned 3 times. A young man with an apologetic smile and excellent posture, he seemed genuinely concerned. "Still waiting for your guest?" "Yeah," Daniel said, forcing brightness into his voice. "She's just running a little late. Traffic, probably." "No problem at all. Let me know if you need anything." Daniel nodded, staring at his phone like it might spontaneously generate an explanation. He opened Sarah's profile again, studying her pictures. The one where she was hiking at Hamilton Pool, the selfie with her rescue dog, the group shot from what looked like a wedding. She seemed real, normal, not the kind of person who would just not show up. At 8:15 he called. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. "Hey Sarah, it's Daniel. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay. I'm still at the restaurant. Hope you're all right. Give me a call when you get this." He hung up and immediately felt pathetic. The couple at the next table had noticed. He could feel their pity like heat against his skin. At 8:30, the server returned with the same kind smile. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but can I get you anything? An appetizer, maybe? Glass of wine?" Daniel looked up at him, at this stranger offering a small dignity, and felt something crack inside his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, let's do that. I'll take a glass of the Chianti. And the calamari, I guess." "Excellent choice." The server's professionalism was a gift. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer empty reassurances. He just nodded and disappeared. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the empty seat across from him. The candle between the place settings flickered, throwing shadows across the unused napkin, the untouched silverware, the water glass sweating condensation onto the wood. This was worse than he'd imagined. He'd spent 3 years building up the courage to try dating again, and he couldn't even get someone to show up. At 8:45, Daniel made a decision. He wasn't going to slink out of here like some wounded animal. He wasn't going to let this moment define him. He'd already lost so much. His wife, 3 years of his life to grief, countless nights lying awake wondering if he'd ever feel normal again. He wasn't going to surrender an evening to someone else's thoughtlessness. When the server returned with his wine and calamari, Daniel looked up at him with something resembling resolve. "Can I see the dinner menu again?" The young man's expression shifted, surprise, then respect. "Of course." Daniel ordered the bolognese. He ordered it deliberately, carefully, as if this decision mattered more than it actually did. When the server left, he took a sip of wine and pulled out his phone, not to check for messages this time, but to open the Notes app where he kept his works in progress. For the past 2 months, he'd been designing a logo for a local coffee roaster. A small job, nothing glamorous, but it paid well and the owners were kind. He'd been stuck on the typography, unable to get the weight balance right. Now, sitting alone in this restaurant with nothing but his embarrassment and a glass of decent wine, he opened the file and started sketching alternatives with his finger on the screen. It was easier than thinking about Sarah, easier than wondering what he'd done wrong, what he'd said in their messages that had made her decide he wasn't worth meeting, easier than feeling sorry for himself. The bolognese arrived. Daniel ate slowly, methodically, tasting nothing. Around him, the restaurant filled with Friday night energy, laughter and clinking glasses, couples leaning close over candlelight, friends celebrating the end of the work week. He existed in a bubble of silence at the center of it all. At 9:20, he was nearly finished with his meal when the door opened again. Daniel didn't look up. He'd stopped looking up an hour ago. But then he heard footsteps approaching his table, confident, purposeful, and a woman's voice low and clear. "Excuse me, you're Daniel Hayes, aren't you?" He glanced up, startled. The woman standing beside his table was not Sarah Chen. She was tall, probably 5'10", with dark auburn hair pulled back in a sleek bun that suggested discipline and long hours. She wore a black wool coat that looked expensive, tailored perfectly to her frame, and beneath it, a charcoal dress that belonged in a boardroom. Her eyes were sharp and assessing, the kind of eyes that noticed everything. She was, Daniel thought distantly, absolutely striking. Yes, he managed. "I'm Daniel. Do I know you?" "No." She gestured to the empty chair. May I? Daniel blinked, utterly confused. I'm sorry, I think there's been some... My name is Victoria Langford, she said, sitting down without waiting for permission. She removed her coat with practiced efficiency, draping it over the back of the chair. And I need to explain why the woman you were supposed to meet tonight didn't show up. Daniel stared at her, his brain struggling to process this sudden intrusion into his miserable evening. I'm sorry, what? Victoria folded her hands on the table, her posture perfect. Everything about her radiated control, the way she held herself, the way she looked directly into his eyes without wavering, the way she seemed completely comfortable disrupting a stranger's dinner. Sarah Chen, Victoria said. The woman from the dating app. She works for me. She was supposed to meet you tonight and she didn't come. I'm here to explain why. Daniel felt heat rising up his neck. Of course. Of course Sarah had told someone about this disaster. Probably laughed about it with her coworkers, the poor single dad she'd decided wasn't worth meeting. And now her boss had shown up to... what? Apologize? Gloat? Look, Daniel said, his voice tight. You really didn't need to come here. It's fine. These things happen. I get it. No, Victoria said calmly. You don't. Excuse me? Sarah didn't ghost you because she wasn't interested, Victoria continued. She ghosted you because she panicked. She has severe social anxiety, something she's been working on, but apparently not successfully enough. This morning, she had a panic attack about tonight. Instead of texting you to cancel like a rational adult, she shut down completely. Blocked your number, deleted the app, and called in sick to work. Daniel's anger deflated slightly, replaced by confusion. Okay, but why are you telling me this? Why are you here? Victoria leaned back slightly, studying him with those sharp eyes. Because when Sarah mentioned she had a date with a graphic designer named Daniel Hayes, I looked you up. A cold thread of unease wound through Daniel's chest. You looked me up. Your portfolio is public, Victoria said, as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world. I found your website in 30 seconds. I spent the last 3 days reviewing your work. Daniel didn't know what to say. This woman, this complete stranger, had been researching him? That's kind of creepy, honestly. Is it? Victoria tilted her head slightly. You put your work on the internet specifically so people could find it. I found it. I was impressed. Impressed enough to track me down at a restaurant? Yes. The sheer audacity of it left Daniel speechless. The server appeared, taking in the new dynamic at the table with barely concealed curiosity. Can I get you anything, ma'am? Sparkling water, Victoria said without looking at him. And the check for Mr. Hayes' meal. Put it on my card. Wait, Daniel protested. You can't just... I can, Victoria said simply. And I am. You waited here for 2 hours because someone who works for me failed to show basic courtesy. The least I can do is buy you dinner. The server retreated, wisely choosing not to get involved in whatever this was. Daniel rubbed his face, trying to regain his equilibrium. Okay, so you bought my dinner, great. Is that all, or are you going to tell me that Sarah wants to reschedule? She doesn't, Victoria said. And frankly, I don't think you should pursue that, even if she did. If she couldn't manage to send you a simple text message explaining her anxiety, she's not ready to date anyone. That's harsh. That's honest. Victoria's expression didn't change. I don't do gentle lies, Mr. Hayes. I don't have time for them. Then what do you want? Daniel asked, his frustration finally spilling over. Why are you really here? Victoria reached into her bag, black leather, probably cost more than his car, and pulled out a business card. She slid it across the table. Victoria Langford, Chief Executive Officer, Langford Hospitality Group. Daniel picked up the card, studying the embossed lettering, the weight of the cardstock. You run a hospitality company. I own a hospitality company, Victoria corrected. 7 boutique hotels and 12 restaurants across Texas. We specialize in properties that combine modern luxury with historical architecture. Our revenue last year was $42 million. She said it without a pride or boasting, just stating facts. That's impressive, Daniel said carefully, but I still don't understand what this has to do with me. Our visual identity is outdated, Victoria said. Our logo looks like something from 2008. Our website is functional but uninspired. Our marketing materials lack cohesion. I've been searching for someone to redesign everything. Someone with a clean aesthetic, someone who understands restraint, someone who can translate the essence of what we do into something visually compelling. She paused, her eyes never leaving his. Your work suggests you might be that person. Daniel's mind was reeling. You want to hire me? I want to interview you properly. But yes, that's the general idea. Based on what? Looking at my website for 3 days? Based on your portfolio, yes. And based on watching you sit in this restaurant for the last 90 minutes. The words landed like a physical blow. You watched me? I arrived at 7:40, Victoria said matter-of-factly. I sat at the bar. I watched you wait. I watched you check the door every time it opened. I watched you text her, call her, and then decide to stay anyway and order dinner. I watched you choose dignity over self-pity. Daniel felt violated and strangely seen at the same time. That's incredibly invasive. It's thorough, Victoria countered. I needed to see how you handle disappointment, how you manage your emotions under pressure. I hire people for who they are, not just what they can do. Skills can be taught. Character can't. And what did you determine about my character from spying on me? For the first time, something that might have been a smile touched the corner of Victoria's mouth. That you're patient, that you don't give up easily, that you have self-control, and that you're either very brave or very stupid for calling me creepy to my face. Little bit of both, probably, Daniel muttered. This time Victoria did smile, sharp and brief. Good. I don't work well with people who tell me what they think I want to hear. The server returned with Victoria's sparkling water and the check folder, which he placed discreetly beside her plate. She signed it without looking at the total. I have a meeting Monday morning at 9, Victoria said, standing and putting her coat back on. My office is in the Frost Tower downtown. If you're interested in discussing this further, be there. If you're not, don't waste my time. She turned to leave, then paused, looking back at him. For what it's worth, Mr. Hayes, Sarah's loss is my gain. That woman you were waiting for? She wasn't going to appreciate what you have to offer. I will. And then she was gone, disappearing into the Friday night rain as abruptly as she'd arrived. Yunt. Daniel sat frozen at the table, staring at the business card in his hand. Around him, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm, couples eating, servers bustling, music playing, but he felt like he'd just experienced something from a different reality. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. How's it going? How is it going? He'd been stood up by one woman and recruited by another. He'd spent 2 hours in emotional purgatory and come out the other side with a job interview he hadn't asked for and didn't fully understand. Interesting, he typed back. I'll explain later. He looked at Victoria's business card again, then pulled out his phone and searched for Langford Hospitality Group. The website loaded, clean but dated, exactly as she'd described. The logo was generic, the kind of thing someone might create in 20 minutes using a template, but the properties themselves were beautiful. Historic buildings transformed into luxury accommodations, each one unique, each one clearly expensive. He clicked through to the About page and found a professional photo of Victoria Langford. She looked exactly as she had in person, controlled, sharp, immaculately dressed. The bio beneath was sparse. Victoria Langford founded Langford Hospitality Group in 2016 after spending a decade in commercial real estate development. Under her leadership, the company has grown from a single property to a portfolio of 19 locations across Texas, with expansion plans in New Mexico and Colorado. She holds an MBA from Stanford and serves on the boards of 3 nonprofit organizations focused on historic preservation. Daniel read it twice, then checked the portfolio section. The properties ranged from a converted railway station in San Antonio to a 1920s hotel in Fort Worth. Each one had been restored with obvious care and considerable investment. This was real. This woman was real, and she wanted to hire him. He thought about his current client roster: the coffee roaster, a local yoga studio, 2 small nonprofits, and a handful of one-off projects that paid enough to keep the lights on, but never quite enough to feel secure. He thought about his cramped home office, his aging laptop, the constant hustle of finding new work while raising Emma alone. Then he thought about Victoria Langford watching him from the bar, assessing him, making decisions about his character based on how he handled rejection. It should have made him angry. Instead, he felt something else. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. The sense that this strange, invasive woman had seen something in him that most people missed. He tucked the business card into his wallet, paid the tip in cash, and walked out into the rain. The weekend passed in a blur of normal father-daughter activities: pancakes for breakfast, a trip to Zilker Park despite the drizzle, an afternoon building a blanket fort in the living room. Emma talked nonstop about her sleepover at Grandma's house, about the cookies they'd baked and the old photo albums they'd looked through. "Grandma showed me pictures of you when you were little," Emma announced, sitting cross-legged in the fort they'd constructed from couch cushions and bed sheets. "You had really weird hair." "Thanks, sweetheart," Daniel said, smiling. "Very supportive." "It's true, though. It was all poofy." "It was the 80s. Everyone's hair was poofy." Emma giggled, then grew quieter. She picked at the edge of a pillow, her small face suddenly serious. "Grandma said you went on a date Friday night." Daniel's chest tightened. "I did." "Did you have fun?" He thought about the right way to answer. Emma was 6, old enough to understand that Daddy sometimes got lonely, but too young to burden with the complexities of adult disappointment. "It didn't quite work out the way I expected," he said carefully, "but something interesting happened instead." "What?" "I might have a new job. A big one." Emma's eyes widened. "Like making pictures?" "Like making pictures for a whole bunch of fancy hotels and restaurants." "Cool." She seemed genuinely excited, then her expression shifted again. "Does that mean you'll be busy a lot?" There it was. The fear that lived beneath all her questions. The fear that he would disappear the way her mother had. That busyness was just another word for leaving. Daniel pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "Hey, remember what I always tell you?" "You're not going anywhere," Emma recited dutifully. "That's right. Even if I have 100 jobs, even if I'm busy every single day, I'm still coming home to you every single night. That's never going to change." She nodded against his chest, and he felt her relax slightly. "Now," he said, pulling back and grinning at her, "want to watch that movie about the singing dog?" "Yes!" And just like that, they were back to normal. Just a dad and his daughter, building forts and eating popcorn and pretending that the world outside didn't exist. But later, after Emma had fallen asleep in her bed surrounded by stuffed animals, Daniel sat at his desk and stared at Victoria Langford's business card. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. He thought about showing up in his best clothes, rehearsing answers to potential interview questions, trying to sell himself the way he'd learned to do with every client. Then he thought about Victoria's eyes, sharp and assessing, and realized that wouldn't work with her. She'd already decided to interview him. She'd already seen him at his worst, waiting alone in a restaurant. Whatever happened Monday, it would be real, raw, no performance. The thought was terrifying and oddly liberating. Daniel opened his laptop and spent the next 2 hours preparing a presentation. Not his usual portfolio pieces, but specific concepts for how he might approach Langford Hospitality Group's rebrand. He studied each property on their website, noting architectural details, historical context, the subtle differences that made each location unique. He worked until his eyes burned and his coffee had gone cold, until the ideas in his head had become something tangible he could show her. At 2 a.m., he finally closed the laptop and went to bed, his mind still racing. Geshabbat. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of November day that made Austin feel almost like a real city with seasons. Daniel dropped Emma at school, enduring her excited questions about his big meeting, then drove downtown to the Frost Tower. The building was all glass and steel, reflecting the cloudy sky and thousands of metallic panels. He parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the 23rd floor, and found himself in a reception area that screamed quiet money, marble floors, mid-century modern furniture, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than his car. A receptionist looked up from her desk, young, professional, with a smile that seemed genuine. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Daniel Hayes," he said, trying to project more confidence than he felt. "I have a 9 o'clock with Victoria Langford." She checked her computer, then nodded. "Of course, Mr. Hayes. Miss Langford is expecting you. If you'll follow me." She led him down a hallway lined with framed photographs of Langford properties, each one beautifully shot, clearly professional. They passed several offices where people worked at standing desks, typing rapidly, speaking into headsets. Everyone looked focused, busy, like they knew exactly what they were doing. The receptionist stopped at a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Right in here." Daniel stepped inside and felt his breath catch. The view was incredible. Downtown Austin spread out below, the Capitol building visible in the distance, Lady Bird Lake a silver ribbon cutting through the city. But it was the office itself that struck him. It was immaculate without being sterile, modern without being cold. A large desk with nothing on it except a laptop and a single-frame photograph. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with architecture and design books. A small seating area with a leather couch and 2 chairs. And behind the desk, Victoria Langford, wearing a navy suit and looking exactly as formidable as she had Friday night. "Mr. Hayes," she said, standing, "you came." "You told me to," Daniel replied, then immediately regretted the defensive tone. But Victoria just smiled slightly. "I tell a lot of people to do things. Not all of them listen. Please, sit." He sat in one of his chairs across from her desk, setting his laptop bag on the floor beside him. She remained standing for a moment, studying him with that same assessing gaze. "Did you bring a portfolio?" she asked. "I brought something better." Daniel pulled out his laptop, opened it, and turned the screen toward her. "I spent the weekend studying your properties. I put together some initial concepts for how I'd approach your rebrand." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise or perhaps approval. She sat down and pulled the laptop closer, clicking through his presentation in silence. Daniel watched her face, trying to read her reaction, but she gave nothing away, her expression neutral as she studied each slide. The silence stretched. Daniel's palms were sweating. Finally, Victoria looked up. "You worked on this over the weekend." "Yes." "Why?" The question caught him off guard. "Because you're offering me an opportunity. I wanted to show you I'm serious about it." "You don't even know what I'm paying yet." "Doesn't matter," Daniel said. "This is the kind of project I've been wanting to do for years. If the money works, great. If it doesn't, we'll negotiate. But I'm not going to waste your time or mine by showing up unprepared." Victoria closed the laptop and slid it back across the desk. Her expression was still unreadable. "These concepts are good," she said finally. "Thoughtful. You clearly understand what makes each property unique, but they're also safe." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Safe?" "You're trying to please me," Victoria said. "Trying to anticipate what I want. That's a good instinct for client work, but it's not what I need. I need someone who will challenge me, push back, tell me when I'm wrong." "You hired me to design a brand identity," Daniel said carefully, "not to argue with you." "I'm hiring you to be a creative partner," Victoria corrected, "which means sometimes you'll need to argue with me. If you're just going to execute whatever I tell you to do, I can hire a freelancer on Fiverr for 1/10 of what I'm about to offer you." She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the desk. "That's a contract, standard NDA, project scope, timeline, and payment terms. You'll have full creative control over the visual identity, with approval needed only on final deliverables. You'll work on site 3 days a week, the other 2 remotely. The project timeline is 6 months, with an option to extend if needed." Daniel opened the folder, scanned the first page, and felt his eyes widen when he reached the compensation section. It was more than he'd made in the last 2 years combined. "This is..." He looked up at her, searching for words. "This is very generous." "It's market rate for the scope of work involved," Victoria said flatly. "I don't lowball people. I pay what the work is worth." Daniel stared at the contract, his mind spinning. This would change everything. He could pay off his credit cards, build a real emergency fund, maybe even hire a part-time assistant to handle the administrative work he hated. "What's the catch?" he asked. Victoria leaned back in her chair, that slight smile returning. "The catch is that I'm demanding. I have high standards. I don't accept mediocrity, and I don't tolerate excuses. If you take this job, you'll work harder than you've probably ever worked. I'll push you. I'll critique your work. I'll make you redo things until they're right." "That doesn't scare me," Daniel said. "It should." They looked at each other across the desk. This strange woman who'd invaded his disaster of a date and somehow turned it into a professional opportunity, and the grieving single father who'd been treading water for 3 years. "I have a daughter," Daniel said suddenly. "She's 6. I pick her up from school every day at 3:30. I don't work weekends unless it's an emergency. Those are my non-negotiables." He expected resistance. Instead, Victoria nodded. "Fair enough. I respect clear boundaries. As long as the work gets done and the quality is there, I don't care when you do it. I have a managing director who handles day-to-day operations. You'll report to me directly, but you won't be on call 24/7. She pulled a pen from her desk drawer and held it out. "Any other concerns?" Daniel took the pen, feeling its weight in his hand. He thought about Emma, about the life he'd built for her in the ruins of his grief. He thought about his small client roster, the constant uncertainty, the slow grind of freelance life. Then he thought about Victoria Langford watching him sit alone in a restaurant, seeing something in that humiliating moment that he hadn't seen himself. "Just one," he said. "Why me? Really? You could hire anyone, someone with more experience, someone who's done this kind of work before. Why take a chance on a freelancer you found through a dating app disaster?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her sharp eyes studying him. "Because," she said finally, "most people would have left that restaurant angry, bitter, blaming Sarah or the app or the universe for wasting their time. But you didn't. You stayed. You ordered dinner. You found a way to salvage something from a terrible situation. That tells me more about who you are than any portfolio ever could." She stood, extending her hand across the desk. "I don't need someone who's never failed, Mr. Hayes. I need someone who knows how to fail and keep going anyway. So, do we have a deal?" Daniel looked at her hand, then at the contract in front of him. He thought about all the reasons this could go wrong. Working for someone this intense, this demanding, this uncomfortably perceptive. Then he thought about the alternative, going back to his home office, scraping together small projects, wondering if he'd ever get a chance like this again. He signed the contract. "We have a deal." Victoria's handshake was firm, businesslike, over in exactly 3 seconds. She released his hand and immediately moved to the window, her silhouette sharp against the gray Austin skyline. "You start Wednesday," she said without turning around. "That gives you tomorrow to wrap up any outstanding commitments and get your affairs in order. I'll have Melissa, my assistant, send you building access credentials and an onboarding packet. Read everything. I don't repeat information." Daniel was still processing the fact that he'd just signed a 6-month contract worth more money than he'd seen in years. "Wednesday. Right, I'll need to arrange childcare for the days you're working on site," Victoria finished. "I know. 3:30 pickup is non-negotiable, you said, so plan accordingly. I need you here by 8:30 those 3 days. That gives you 7 hours. Use them well." She turned back to face him, and Daniel caught something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Not quite warmth, but something adjacent to it. Respect, maybe. Or curiosity. "One more thing," Victoria said. "I don't believe in hand-holding. You're talented. I wouldn't have hired you otherwise. But talent without discipline is just noise. I'll expect weekly progress presentations, concrete deliverables every 2 weeks, and complete transparency when you hit obstacles. I don't punish people for struggling. I punish them for hiding it." "Understood," Daniel said, standing and gathering his laptop. His legs felt unsteady, adrenaline still coursing through his system. Victoria walked him to the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. "Mr. Hayes?" "Daniel," he said, "if we're going to be working together, you can call me Daniel." Her mouth twitched, that almost smile again. "Daniel, then. Do you know why most rebranding projects fail?" He thought about it. "Poor execution?" "Poor honesty," Victoria corrected. "Companies hire designers to make them look different, but they won't do the hard work of actually being different. They want the aesthetic of change without the substance. I'm not interested in window dressing. If you're going to rebuild my brand, I need you to understand what it actually stands for, which means you need to see the properties. Meet the teams. Understand the culture we've built." "That makes sense," Daniel said carefully. "Good. Because next Monday, you and I are driving to San Antonio, the Riverwalk property, our flagship hotel. We'll spend the day there, and you'll see what I mean." She checked her watch, a sleek silver piece that probably cost 5 figures. "Bring comfortable shoes. It's a lot of walking. Before Daniel could respond, she'd already turned back to her desk, her attention shifting to her computer screen. The conversation was over. He'd been dismissed. He walked back through the hallway, past the busy offices and the professional photographs, into the elevator and down to the parking garage in a daze. It wasn't until he was sitting in his Honda, staring at the concrete wall in front of him, that the full weight of what had just happened settled over him. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Daniel pulled out his phone and called the one person who would understand. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Hayes, how'd the date go? Please tell me you didn't spend the whole time talking about kerning." "The date didn't happen," Daniel said. "But something else did." He explained everything: Sarah's no-show, Victoria's appearance, the job offer, the contract he'd just signed. Marcus listened in stunned silence. "Wait," Marcus said when Daniel finished. "Wait, back up. This woman just showed up at the restaurant and offered you a job?" "Basically, yeah." That's insane. That's absolutely insane. You know that, right?" Daniel laughed, surprised by how good it felt. "I'm aware." "And you took it? Just like that? Without thinking about it?" "I thought about it all weekend," Daniel said. "And yeah, I took it. Marcus, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. The kind of project that could change everything." "Or blow up in your face spectacularly," Marcus said, but his tone was warm. "But honestly, man, I'm proud of you. You've been playing it safe for 3 years. Maybe it's time to take a risk." They talked for another 10 minutes, Marcus offering unsolicited advice and Daniel half listening, still trying to process the morning. When they hung up, Daniel sat in his car for another few minutes, then drove to Emma's school. He was 2 hours early for pickup, so he went to the coffee shop across the street and ordered a large Americano. He needed to think, needed to plan, needed to figure out how he was going to juggle this massive new project with being a single father to a 6-year-old. His phone buzzed. An email from Melissa Chen, Victoria's assistant, with the subject line, "LHG Onboarding Materials." Daniel opened it. 3 attachments: building access instructions, a comprehensive overview of Langford Hospitality Group's history and properties, and a document titled Working with Victoria, a survival guide. He clicked on the last one, intrigued. "Welcome to the team. If you're reading this, it means Victoria saw something in you worth investing in." That's good news. The bad news is that working for her is unlike anything you've probably experienced before. She's brilliant, demanding, and has zero tolerance for mediocrity. Here are some things that will help you survive. 1. Be early. If a meeting starts at 9, be there at 8:55. She considers lateness a sign of disrespect. 2. Come prepared. She will ask questions you don't expect. Have answers or admit you don't know and commit to finding out. 3. Don't waste her time. Get to the point quickly. She appreciates clarity over politeness. 4. Push back when you disagree. She respects people who challenge her, as long as they have reasons. 5. Take care of yourself. She works 80-hour weeks, but she doesn't expect you to. Burnout serves no one. Good luck. You'll need it. Melissa. Daniel read it twice, then saved it to his phone. He had a feeling he'd be referencing it often. Wednesday morning arrived faster than Daniel was ready for. He woke at 6, made Emma pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, and drove her to school while she chattered about a field trip to the zoo coming up next month. "Can we get a penguin?" Emma asked as he walked her to the classroom door. "Penguins are expensive," Daniel said seriously, "and they need a lot of ice." "We have a freezer." "Not big enough for a penguin." She giggled, then hugged him tight around the waist. "Have a good day at your new job, Daddy." "You too, sweetheart. Love you. Love you more." It was their ritual, the same words every morning. Daniel watched her run into the classroom, her backpack bouncing, and felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the fear that something would happen to her while he wasn't looking, the guilt that he couldn't be everywhere at once. Then he drove downtown, parked in the Frost Tower garage, and took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The receptionist from Monday greeted him with a smile. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. Your workspace is ready. Let me show you." She led him to a smaller office 3 doors down from Victoria's, still with windows, though not the panoramic views of the corner office. A standing desk had been set up with a large monitor, a desktop computer that looked brand new, and a second monitor for reference work. A comfortable chair. A small couch against one wall. everything clean, organized, waiting for him. If you need anything, supplies, equipment, whatever, just let me know, the receptionist said. I'm Amanda, by the way. I keep this floor running. Nice to meet you properly, Daniel said. And thank you. This is really great. Amanda smiled. Victoria takes care of her people. You'll see. She checked her watch. She has meetings until 10, then she wants to see you. I'll come get you when she's ready. She left, and Daniel stood alone in his new office, feeling surreal. He'd worked from his cramped spare bedroom for so long that having an actual professional workspace felt almost decadent. He spent the next 90 minutes setting up his computer, transferring files, and reviewing the onboarding materials Melissa had sent. The company overview was extensive. Each property had its own history, its own story of restoration and transformation. Victoria had clearly chosen these locations carefully, finding buildings with architectural significance and breathing new life into them. At exactly 10 o'clock, Amanda appeared in his doorway. She's ready for you. Daniel grabbed his notebook and followed her to Victoria's office. The door was open, but Amanda knocked anyway. Come in, Victoria said without looking up from her laptop. Daniel entered. Victoria was on a phone call speaking rapid-fire Spanish to someone about permit delays and construction timelines. She gestured for him to sit while she finished the conversation. No me importa lo que dijo el inspector. ¿Necesito eso resuelto para el viernes o encontraré a alguien que pueda hacerlo? Sí, gracias. She hung up and immediately shifted her focus to Daniel. Problems in El Paso. Renovating a 1940s motor lodge into a boutique property, and the city keeps moving the goalposts on electrical code compliance. Sounds frustrating, Daniel offered. It's business, Victoria said dismissively. You deal with obstacles or you fail. I don't fail. She pulled up something on her computer. I want to show you something. She turned the monitor so Daniel could see. It was a mock-up of a website, the current Langford Hospitality Group site, but with sections highlighted in red. This is everything that needs to change, Victoria said. The logo, obviously, but also the photography style, the color palette, the typography, the way we describe our properties. Right now, we sound like every other boutique hotel chain, generic luxury language, unparalleled comfort, exquisite attention to detail. It's meaningless. What do you want to sound like instead? Daniel asked. Victoria leaned back, her expression thoughtful. Honest. We're not trying to be the Four Seasons. We're not chasing Michelin stars. What we offer is something different, history brought forward, spaces that remember what they were while becoming something new. I want the brand to reflect that tension, the past and the present, holding each other in balance. Daniel felt something click in his mind. So not restoration, transformation. Exactly. Victoria's eyes lit up, genuine enthusiasm breaking through her controlled exterior. Most historic hotels either turn into museums or they gut everything historic to make room for modern amenities. We don't do either. We find the soul of the building and we build around it. She stood and walked to the bookshelves, pulling down a heavy coffee table book. She brought it back and opened it to a marked page, a photograph of a derelict railway station, windows broken, paint peeling, plants growing through cracks in the floor. That's the San Antonio property, she said. Before we bought it. Everyone thought we were crazy. The building had been abandoned for 20 years, but look. She flipped to another page, and the same space transformed. The bones were still visible. The arched windows, the original tile work, the massive wooden beams, but now surrounded by modern comfort. We didn't hide what it was. We honored it. Daniel studied the photographs, his designer brain already cataloging details. This is incredible work. It took 3 years and $12 million, Victoria said flatly. And it was worth every penny and every sleepless night. Because now when people walk into that lobby, they feel something. They feel the weight of history and the lightness of possibility at the same time. She closed the book and looked at him directly. That's what I need you to capture. Not just in a logo, but in everything we put out into the world. Can you do that? It was a challenge and a test and an invitation all at once. Daniel met her gaze and didn't look away. Yes, he said, I can. Good. Then let's start with the logo. Show me everything you hate about the current one. They spent the next 2 hours dissecting the existing brand identity with surgical precision. Victoria was relentless, questioning every assumption, pushing Daniel to articulate not just what was wrong, but why it mattered. She challenged him when he used vague designer language, visual hierarchy, or brand cohesion, demanding concrete explanations. "Don't tell me about hierarchy," she said at one point. "Tell me what you want people to feel when they see it." It was exhausting and exhilarating. Daniel had never worked with a client who understood the difference between decoration and communication this clearly. Most clients wanted things to look nice or modern without understanding the strategic thinking behind design choices. Victoria wanted to understand everything. By noon, Daniel's notebook was filled with sketches and notes. Victoria checked her watch. "I have a lunch meeting with investors. Be back at 2. Between now and then, I want you to sketch 20 logo concepts. Don't refine them. Don't make them pretty. Just get ideas out of your head and onto paper. Fast, rough, quantity over quality." 20? Daniel repeated. 20. If you can't generate 20 different directions, you're not thinking broadly enough. She stood, grabbing her coat. "And Daniel? Don't second-guess yourself. Trust your instincts. I hired them for a reason." She left, and Daniel sat alone in her office for a moment, his head spinning. Then he walked back to his own workspace, pulled out his sketchbook, and started drawing. 20 concepts, fast and rough. He set a timer for 90 minutes and didn't let himself think too hard about any single idea. Geometric shapes, organic forms, typography treatments, abstract symbols. He drew arches and doorways, keys and bridges, timelines and transformations. Some ideas were terrible. Some had potential. Most fell somewhere in between. When the timer went off, he had 23 sketches spread across his desk. He grabbed coffee from the break room, proper espresso from a machine that looked Italian and expensive, and returned to his office. Amanda poked her head in. "How's the first day going?" she asked. "Intense," Daniel admitted. "But good." "Yeah, that sounds about right. Victoria doesn't ease people in gently. You either keep up or you don't." She smiled. "For what it's worth, I think you'll keep up. She wouldn't have hired you otherwise." At 2 o'clock sharp, Daniel returned to Victoria's office with his sketchbook. She was back at her desk, already working on something else, but she immediately closed her laptop when he entered. "Let me see." Daniel laid the sketches out on her desk, arranging them in loose groupings based on conceptual approach. Victoria stood and studied them in silence, moving from one to the next with complete focus. The silence stretched. Daniel resisted the urge to explain or defend his work. Finally, Victoria pointed to 3 sketches. "These. Tell me about these." The first was an abstract mark based on intersecting arches, past and present meeting. The second used negative space to create a door that was simultaneously opening and closing. The third was a typographic treatment that incorporated architectural details into the letter forms themselves. Daniel explained his thinking behind each one, keeping his language concrete the way she'd demanded earlier. Victoria listened without interrupting. "The arch concept is the strongest," she said when he finished, "but it needs refinement. It's too literal right now. I don't want people to see it and think old building. I want them to feel transformation without being able to explain why." "More abstract, less representational," Daniel said, already seeing how he could push it further. "Exactly. Develop that direction. 5 variations by Friday. And I want to see them in context, on a website, on signage, on business cards. Don't just show me the logo in isolation." She gathered the other sketches and handed them back to him. "The rest of these, file them away. Sometimes the ideas that don't work now become relevant later. Don't throw anything away." "Understood." Victoria sat back down and Daniel recognized the dismissal. But as he reached the door, she spoke again. "Daniel?" He turned back. "You did good work today. Fast thinking, solid concepts, and you didn't waste my time trying to explain away the weak ideas. Keep that up." It wasn't effusive praise, but coming from Victoria Langford, it felt like a standing ovation. The rest of the week passed in a blur of focused work. Daniel fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the office working on logo variations. Afternoons picking up Emma and working from home while she did homework or played. Evenings after she went to bed, he refined concepts, tested them in different contexts, pushed himself to think beyond the obvious solutions. Friday afternoon, he presented 5 logo variations to Victoria. She eliminated 3 immediately, asked for modifications to the remaining 2, then told him to spend the weekend testing them against the actual properties. I want you to pull up photographs of each location and see how the logo would look on their facades, their menus, their websites. Does it feel right? Does it capture what makes that specific property special? If it doesn't work everywhere, it doesn't work anywhere. Saturday morning, after making Emma breakfast and watching her favorite cartoons with her, Daniel spread out printed photographs of all 19 Langford properties across his dining room table. Emma wandered over, curious. "What are you doing, Daddy?" "Trying to figure out which of these designs works best," he explained, showing her the 2 logo variations. Emma studied them with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. Then she pointed to one. "That one." "Yeah, why?" "Because it looks like a door that's magic, like in a fairy tale." Daniel looked at the design she'd chosen, the one with negative space creating the door effect, and realized she was right. There was something almost magical about it, the way the eye couldn't quite decide if the door was opening or closing, appearing or disappearing. "You're a genius, you know that?" he said, pulling her into a hug. She giggled. "Can I help?" "Absolutely." They spent the next hour together, Emma cutting out printed versions of the logo while Daniel digitally tested them against property photographs. She talked nonstop about school, about her friend Sophia who had 2 hamsters, about the upcoming zoo field trip. Daniel half listened, most of his attention on the work, but some part of him savoring this. His daughter beside him, both of them creating something together. By Sunday evening, he had a clear answer. The negative space concept worked across every property. It was subtle enough to feel sophisticated, but distinctive enough to be memorable. It transformed depending on the context while remaining recognizable, exactly what Victoria had asked for. Monday morning, Daniel arrived at the office at 8:15, printed mock-ups in hand. Victoria's door was already open, lights on. He knocked. "Come in." He entered and immediately spread the mock-ups across her desk, the logo on the San Antonio property's stone facade, on elegant restaurant menus, on hotel key cards, on the website header. Victoria studied each one in silence. Daniel watched her face, trying to read her reaction. "This," she said finally, pointing to the version on the San Antonio facade, "is exactly what I wanted. It honors the architecture without competing with it. It feels like it belongs there." Relief flooded through him. "So we move forward with this direction?" "We do." Victoria gathered the mock-ups into a neat stack. "But before we go any further, you need to see these properties in person. Understanding them intellectually isn't enough. You need to stand in these spaces, feel them, know them." She checked her watch. "Which is why we're leaving for San Antonio in 30 minutes. Go get whatever you need. We'll be back by 7 tonight." Daniel blinked. "Today?" "Right now. I cleared both our schedules. Amanda's already arranged everything." Victoria stood, grabbing her coat. "Unless you have a conflict." "No, my mom has Emma today anyway. She's flexible. I just didn't expect—" "Get used to unexpected," Victoria said. "I don't believe in waiting when action is possible. 30 minutes, Daniel. Meet me in the parking garage." Proud. 28 minutes later, Daniel stood in the Frost Tower parking garage next to a sleek black Tesla Model S. Victoria appeared moments later, carrying a leather briefcase and looking like she was heading into a board meeting rather than a road trip. "You drive or I drive?" she asked, unlocking the car. "Your car, your choice," Daniel said. "I'll drive. I don't trust other people's driving." She slid into the driver's seat, and Daniel got in on the passenger side, feeling the expensive leather and noting the complete absence of clutter. The car was immaculate. Victoria pulled out of the garage and navigated through downtown Austin traffic with calm efficiency. Once they hit I-35 South, she set the cruise control and glanced at him. "Tell me about your daughter." The question caught Daniel off guard. "Emma?" "That's her name? Emma?" "Yeah, she's 6, first grade, obsessed with dinosaurs and convinced we should get a penguin." Victoria's mouth twitched. "A penguin?" "She's very persuasive. I had to explain freezer logistics." "What happened to her mother?" The question was direct, unsoftened. Classic Victoria. Daniel had learned over the past week that she didn't dance around difficult topics. "Cancer, 3 years ago. She was diagnosed when Emma was 2, gone before her 4th birthday. I'm sorry. Thank you. Daniel looked out at the Texas landscape rolling past, flat scrubland dotted with live oaks. It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But Emma got me through it. Having to wake up every day and be a parent, even when I wanted to fall apart, it saved my life. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Is that why you haven't dated? Until the incident with Sarah? Partly. Mostly I just couldn't imagine trying to explain my life to someone new. The grief, the single parenting, the constant feeling of being one crisis away from everything falling apart. He laughed without humor. Not exactly an attractive dating profile. Honest, though. Maybe too honest. There's no such thing. Victoria switched lanes to pass a truck. I was married once, 8 years ago, lasted 14 months. Daniel looked at her, surprised. This was the first personal information she'd volunteered. What happened? He wanted a wife who would make him the center of her universe. I wanted a partner who understood that I had already built a universe and wasn't planning to abandon it. She said it matter-of-factly, without bitterness. We were incompatible. The divorce was clean. We haven't spoken since. Do you regret it? The marriage? Yes. The divorce? No. Victoria glanced at him. I regret wasting 14 months trying to be someone I'm not, but I learned something valuable. I'm not built for the kind of relationship most people want. I work too much. I care too much about my company. I don't want children, and I don't want to pretend I might change my mind someday. That's refreshingly honest, Daniel said. It's also lonely sometimes, Victoria admitted quietly. But loneliness is preferable to pretending to be someone else. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Daniel watched the landscape change as they got closer to San Antonio, the terrain becoming slightly more varied, the sprawl of the city appearing on the horizon. Why did you really hire me? Daniel asked eventually. And don't say it's because of my portfolio. You've seen better portfolios. You could have hired a major agency with 100 designers. Why take a chance on someone working out of their spare bedroom? Victoria didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was thoughtful. Because when I watched you sitting in that restaurant, I saw someone who refused to let circumstances break him. You were disappointed, probably humiliated, definitely hurt. But you didn't run. You didn't make a scene. You just adapted, found a way to salvage dignity from disaster. She paused. That's rare. Most people collapse when things don't go their way. You just keep building. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. You saw all that from watching me eat dinner alone? I see a lot of things other people miss. It's why I'm good at what I do. Victoria took the exit for downtown San Antonio. Plus, your portfolio really is excellent, but talent is common. Resilience isn't. 10 minutes later, they pulled up in front of the Riverwalk property, and Daniel's breath caught. The building was magnificent, a former railway station transformed into a luxury hotel, exactly as the photographs had shown. But seeing it in person was different. The limestone facade glowed in the late morning sun, the arched windows reflecting sky and clouds. Modern glass additions had been integrated so seamlessly that they seemed to have always been there. Victoria parked and led him inside. The lobby was breathtaking, soaring ceilings with the original wooden beams exposed. The old ticket windows had been converted into a reception desk, preserving the brass details and vintage signage. Modern furniture in rich leather and dark wood created intimate seating areas without cluttering the space. Everything felt intentional, considered, perfect. This is incredible, Daniel breathed. This is what we do, Victoria said simply. She nodded to the woman behind the desk. Morning, Patricia. We're just here for a walkthrough. Of course, Ms. Langford. Let me know if you need anything. Victoria led Daniel through the space, pointing out details. How they'd restored the original terrazzo flooring. How the lighting design highlighted architectural features while providing modern functionality. How every piece of furniture had been chosen to complement rather than compete with the building's history. They walked through the restaurant, the library bar, the guest rooms on the upper floors. Each space told the same story, respect for the past, confidence in the present, both existing in harmony. In one of the suites, Victoria stood by the window looking out at the San Antonio River below. When I bought this building, everyone thought I was insane. It needed everything: new electrical, new plumbing, structural reinforcement, asbestos removal. The renovation budget was 3 times what I'd paid for the property. My investors wanted me to sell it for scrap. But you didn't. No, because I could see what it wanted to be. Not what it was, not what it had been, what it was becoming. She turned to face him. That's what I need you to understand. We're not in the nostalgia business. We're in the transformation business. These buildings are still alive, still changing. Your logo needs to capture that. Daniel looked around the suite, at the exposed brick and modern fixtures, the antique writing desk and contemporary art, the way every element existed in productive tension with every other element. I understand, he said. And he did. Finally, completely, he understood what she wanted. They spent another hour at the property, Victoria introducing him to the staff, showing him the kitchen where the executive chef was preparing for dinner service, the event spaces that hosted everything from weddings to corporate retreats. Every person they met spoke about Victoria with genuine respect. Not fear, not obligation, respect. On the drive back to Austin, Daniel felt energized in a way he hadn't felt in years. His mind was racing with ideas, concepts, directions to explore. This wasn't just a logo project anymore. It was a story he needed to tell. "Thank you," he said as they merged back onto E35. Victoria glanced at him. "For what?" "For showing me this. For helping me understand what you're building." "You're part of what I'm building now," Victoria said. "Your work will represent everything I've spent 6 years creating. That's not a responsibility I give lightly." They were quiet for a while, the car eating up miles of highway. Then Victoria spoke again. "I meant what I said earlier about being lonely sometimes." Daniel looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. "I've built something I'm proud of," she continued, "but I did it by sacrificing most of my personal life. No close friends, no relationship, holidays alone. It's the price I chose to pay, and most days I'm fine with it. But sometimes you wonder what you're missing," Daniel finished quietly. "Yes, I get that," Daniel said. "I have Emma, so I'm never really alone, but I miss having someone to share things with. Someone who understands the work, the pressure, the constant balance between what you want and what you can actually manage." Victoria nodded slowly. "Sarah was supposed to be that for you, a chance at normal life." "Yeah, instead I got you." Daniel smiled. "No offense?" "None taken. I'm not normal by any stretch." She paused. "But maybe that's better. Normal is overrated." They pulled into Austin just as the sun was setting, the sky turning gold and pink behind the downtown skyline. Victoria dropped Daniel at his car in the Frost Tower garage. "Same time Wednesday," she said, "and I want to see refined logo options incorporating what you learned today." "You'll have them," Daniel promised. He drove to his mother's house to pick up Emma, his mind still full of arched windows and transformed spaces and Victoria's admission of loneliness. His mother met him at the door, Emma already in her pajamas. "How was work?" his mother asked. "Productive," Daniel said. "Really productive." Emma ran to him, and he scooped her up, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Did you have fun with Grandma?" "We made cookies and watched movies, and Grandma let me stay up late." "Not that late," his mother said with a smile. "How's the new job, really?" Daniel looked at his daughter, then at his mother. "I think it might be the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." And driving home through the Austin night, Emma chattering about her day from the back seat, Daniel realized it was true. The disaster of that failed date had somehow led him here, to meaningful work, to a demanding but honest boss, to feeling like maybe, finally, his life was moving forward instead of just surviving. Sometimes, he thought, the universe works in strange ways. Sometimes the wrong person not showing up makes room for exactly the right thing to happen. The weeks that followed their San Antonio trip blurred together in a rhythm Daniel hadn't experienced since before Rebecca died. The kind of productive intensity where days melted into each other, not from monotony, but from complete absorption in work that actually mattered. He refined the logo through 12 iterations, each one tested against every property in Victoria's portfolio. She rejected 9 of them with surgical precision, pointing out flaws he hadn't noticed but couldn't unsee once she identified them. The logo that finally emerged was deceptively simple, an arch created through negative space that seemed to shift depending on how you looked at it, simultaneously suggesting doorways, bridges, and the passage of time itself. "That's it," Victoria said when he presented the final version on a Friday afternoon in late November. They were in her office, the Austin skyline visible through the windows behind her, clouds gathering for the evening rain that had been threatening all day. "That captures exactly what I wanted. How did you get there?" Daniel pulled up his process documentation, the sketches, the iterations, the dead ends that had taught him what not to do. "I stopped trying to design what I thought you wanted and started designing what the buildings themselves were telling me. Each property is a conversation between past and present. The logo needed to be that conversation in visual form." Victoria studied the logo on her screen, rotating through the various applications he'd mocked up. The negative space is what makes it work. People won't consciously understand why it feels right, but they'll feel it anyway. Exactly. The best design is invisible. People should respond to it emotionally before they analyze it rationally. She looked up at him, and something in her expression had shifted. Not quite warmth. Victoria didn't do warm. But something adjacent to it. Recognition, maybe. Respect that had deepened into something more complex. "We're ahead of schedule," she said. "The website redesign isn't supposed to start for another 2 weeks, but I don't see any reason to wait. Can you begin preliminary work on Monday?" "Already started," Daniel admitted. "I couldn't help myself. I have some initial wireframes and content strategy thoughts." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Show me." He pulled up his laptop and walked her through what he'd been working on during late nights after Emma went to bed. A complete reimagining of how the website could tell the story of each property while maintaining cohesive brand identity. He'd reorganized the navigation, redesigned the booking flow, and created a visual language that let the architecture speak for itself rather than burying it under marketing copy. Victoria listened without interrupting, her focus absolute. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This is better than what I was going to ask for," she said finally. "You're thinking about the entire user experience, not just making things look attractive." "Pretty is easy," Daniel said. "Functional beauty is harder, but it's what lasts." Functional beauty. Victoria repeated the phrase like she was testing its weight. "I like that. That's what we should be aiming for in everything we do." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gathering storm. Lightning flickered in the distance, still too far away to hear the thunder. "I have a question," she said without turning around, "and I want an honest answer." "Okay. Do you like working here? Not the project itself. I know you're invested in the work, but the environment. Working for me. The expectations, the pace, the constant pushing. Is this sustainable for you?" Daniel considered the question carefully. Over the past month, he'd worked harder than he had in years. Victoria demanded excellence, pushed back on his ideas, made him defend every choice. She didn't accept good enough, didn't settle for almost. Some days it was exhausting. Some days it was exhilarating. "It's challenging," he said honestly. "You push harder than any client I've ever had, but that's making me better. I've learned more in the last month than I learned in the previous 2 years. So yes, it's sustainable, because I'm growing." Victoria turned back to face him. "Good, because I'm about to push harder." "How much harder?" "The rebrand launches in April. That's 5 months. In addition to the visual identity and website, I need comprehensive brand guidelines, updated photography direction for all properties, redesigned collateral for everything from business cards to event signage, and a complete social media strategy. It's 3 times the work we initially scoped." Daniel's mind raced, calculating hours and deadlines and the intricate juggling act of managing this alongside Emma's schedule. "That's a massive expansion." "Yes, which is why I'm doubling your contract rate and hiring you an assistant. Someone to handle the production work while you focus on creative direction and strategy. I'm also willing to negotiate flexibility. If you need to work from home more often, we can make that work. But the timeline isn't negotiable. April 15th, we launch. Everything needs to be ready." "Why the rush?" Victoria returned to her desk, pulling up a spreadsheet. "Because in May, we're announcing our expansion into Colorado and New Mexico. 4 new properties over the next 18 months. The rebrand needs to be established and proven before we go public with that news. Investors need to see that we're not just growing, we're evolving. Daniel understood. This wasn't just about making things look better. This was about positioning the company for its next phase of growth. The stakes were higher than he'd realized. "I'll need to talk to my mom about watching Emma more often," he said. "And I'll need to see the production specs for everything you're describing. But yes, I'm in." "You didn't even ask about the new rate." "If you're doubling it, I trust that it's fair. You've been more than fair so far." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction that her judgment of his character had been correct. Most people would have negotiated. Most people don't have a boss who showed up at their worst moment and turned it into the best opportunity of their career, Daniel said quietly. "I trust you, Victoria. You've earned that." The words hung in the air between them, more intimate than he'd intended. Victoria held his gaze for a moment longer than strictly professional, then looked away, gathering papers into a neat stack. "I have a dinner meeting with the New Mexico property developers," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Take the weekend. Enjoy your daughter. Monday, we'll meet with your new assistant and map out the next 5 months." Daniel recognized the dismissal, but as he stood to leave, Victoria spoke again. "Daniel?" He paused at the door. "Thank you for trusting me. I don't take that lightly." He nodded and left, feeling the weight of something unspoken settling over the space they'd just shared. The weekend passed in the comfortable chaos of single parenthood, grocery shopping with Emma riding in the cart and providing running commentary on everything they passed, a birthday party for one of her classmates at a place with too many children and too much sugar, Sunday morning pancakes shaped like increasingly abstract animals. But underneath the normalcy, Daniel felt something shifting. The late nights working had become less about necessity and more about wanting to. The meetings with Victoria had started to extend past their scheduled times, conversations drifting from work into other territories, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the peculiar loneliness of building something that demanded everything. He told himself it was just the natural rapport that developed between people working closely on something meaningful. But Saturday night, after Emma fell asleep, he found himself thinking about the way Victoria had looked at him when he said he trusted her. The way her carefully controlled expression had cracked just slightly, revealing something vulnerable underneath. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Drinks next Friday? Feel like I haven't seen you in weeks." "Can't," Daniel replied. "Major deadline push." "Rain check? You're working too hard, man. When's the last time you did something fun?" Daniel looked around his living room, scattered toys, Emma's drawings taped to the walls. His laptop open on the coffee table with wireframes glowing on the screen. When was the last time he'd done something just for himself? Something that wasn't work or parenting or the endless logistics of managing both. He couldn't remember. After the launch, he typed, "April, I promise." Marcus sent back a skeptical emoji, but didn't push. Daniel returned to his laptop, telling himself he'd just review Monday's presentation one more time. 3 hours later, he was still working, completely absorbed, when his phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. He checked the time. 11:47 p.m. "Hello? I'm sorry to call so late." Her voice was tight, strained in a way he'd never heard before. "Are you awake?" "Yeah, I'm working. Is everything okay?" A pause. "The El Paso deal fell through. The Motor Lodge renovation. The property owners just accepted a competing offer. 3 months of negotiations, gone." Daniel could hear the frustration underneath her controlled tone, the barely contained anger. "I'm sorry, that sucks." "It's business," Victoria said, but her voice betrayed her. "It happens. You plan, you strategize, you do everything right, and sometimes it still falls apart. Where are you?" "My office. I've been here since the dinner meeting ended, trying to figure out our next move." Daniel looked at the clock again. "Have you eaten?" "What?" "Food. Have you had dinner?" "I had appetizers at the meeting. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're sitting alone in your office at midnight, stress spiraling over something you can't control." The words came out before he could stop them. Too familiar, too presumptuous. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "You're right, I am. There's a taco truck on 6th Street that's open until 2. Best Al Pastor in Austin. I could meet you there in 20 minutes. Daniel, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, but sitting alone in your office isn't helping anything, and I'm awake anyway. Might as well be productive about it." Another pause. Then, 20 minutes. Done. The taco truck was exactly where Daniel remembered, parked under a string of colored lights, the smell of grilled pineapple and marinated pork filling the humid night air. A handful of people sat at the nearby picnic tables, late-night service workers, a couple of musicians carrying guitar cases, a group of college students sobering up before heading home. Victoria arrived in her Tesla, still wearing the same business attire from earlier, but looking somehow less armored. She'd taken her hair down, and it fell past her shoulders in dark auburn waves. She looked tired, more human than Daniel had ever seen her. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she said as she approached. "Eating tacos? Meeting my employee at a food truck at midnight because I had a professional setback." "Think of me as a friend who happens to work for you," Daniel said. "Makes it less weird." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Are we friends?" "I think so. Unless you make a habit of calling all your employees to complain about failed deals." "I don't call anyone," Victoria admitted. "That's the problem. When things go wrong, I just handle it alone." They ordered Al Pastor for Daniel, carnitas for Victoria, extra lime and cilantro on everything. They sat at one of the picnic tables under the colored lights, and for a few minutes, they just ate in silence. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I spent 6 months on that El Paso property. I had the entire renovation planned out. I could see what it would become. And then someone with more money came in at the last second and took it. That's brutal. It's happened before. It'll happen again. I know that logically. But emotionally?" She shook her head. "I hate losing. I hate the feeling that all that work meant nothing." Daniel took another bite of his taco, considering his words. "It's not nothing. You learned the property, developed relationships with the sellers, refined your renovation approach. That knowledge doesn't disappear just because this specific deal didn't work out." "That's very optimistic." "That's very true. You taught me that, actually. When you rejected my first 9 logo iterations, I thought all that work was wasted. But each failed version taught me something that made the final version better. The process mattered, even when the individual outcomes didn't work." Victoria looked at him, something shifting in her expression. "You're using my own philosophy against me. I learned from the best." She almost smiled. "You're a strange person, Daniel Hayes. You know that?" "Because I dragged you to a taco truck?" "Because you see the best in everything. Your wife died. You're raising a daughter alone. You spent years barely scraping by. And somehow you're still fundamentally optimistic. How?" Daniel set down his taco, the question hitting deeper than Victoria probably realized. "I'm not optimistic. I'm just stubborn. After Rebecca died, I had 2 choices, give up or keep building. Giving up wasn't an option because of Emma, so I kept building. Some days that looked like optimism. Most days it was just refusing to stop moving forward." "That's not optimism," Victoria said quietly. "That's courage. Or stupidity. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." This time Victoria did smile, genuine and brief. They finished their tacos in comfortable silence, the night sounds of 6th Street washing over them, distant music, car engines, laughter from somewhere down the block. "Thank you," Victoria said eventually. "For this, for answering your phone, for knowing what I needed better than I did." "That's what friends do." She studied him for a long moment, and Daniel felt the air between them shift, charged with something unspoken. Then she stood, breaking the moment. "I should get home. Try to sleep. Tomorrow I need to start looking at alternative properties. Tomorrow's Sunday. Take a day off." "I don't take days off." "Maybe you should." Daniel stood as well, gathering their trash. All that work that supposedly meant nothing. It'll still be there Monday. The stress will still be there Monday. But right now, at 12:43 a.m. on a Sunday morning, you could just let it go for a few hours. Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested something radical. "I don't know how to do that." "Start small. Sleep in. Make yourself breakfast. Read a book. Do one thing that isn't work." "That sounds terrifying." "Yeah, well, Growth is uncomfortable. Someone smart told me that once. Victoria's laugh was soft and surprised. Using my words against me twice in one night. You're getting bold. Working for you has taught me to be bolder. They walked to their cars together, the Austin night warm and humid around them. At her Tesla, Victoria paused with her hand on the door handle. Daniel, the reason I called you tonight, it wasn't just about El Paso. No? No. I called because you're the only person I wanted to talk to. That's new for me. Usually when things go wrong, I prefer to be alone. But tonight I wanted... She stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. You wanted company, Daniel finished gently. Yes, your company specifically. She met his eyes. Is that weird? Given that we work together? I don't think so. I think it's just honest. You're allowed to have friends, Victoria, even if one of them happens to be your employee. She nodded slowly, then got into her car. But before closing the door, she looked back at him. For the record, you're the only person I've met in 10 years who treats me like a normal human being instead of just a boss or a business opportunity. I appreciate that more than you probably realize. She drove away before Daniel could respond, her taillights disappearing into the Austin night. He stood in the parking lot for a few minutes, processing the conversation, the unexpected intimacy of it, the way Victoria had let her guard down in ways he suspected she rarely allowed. Then he drove home, his mind too full for sleep. Monday morning, Daniel arrived at the office to find a young woman waiting outside his door. She was probably 25, with close-cropped hair dyed a vibrant purple and wearing paint-splattered jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. Daniel Hayes? She asked. That's me. I'm Riley Chen. Ms. Langford hired me to be your production assistant, starting today, apparently. She said you'd know what that means. Daniel unlocked his office, gesturing for her to follow. She mentioned hiring an assistant but didn't say you'd be starting so soon. How much has she told you about the project? Complete rebrand of Langford Hospitality Group, launching in April. You handle creative direction and strategy. I handle production and execution. She said you'd fill in the details. Riley looked around the office with open curiosity. This is way nicer than my last job. I was working out of a shared studio space in East Austin with no AC and questionable Wi-Fi. Where did Victoria find you? I actually applied 6 months ago for a junior designer position. Didn't get it, but Ms. Langford apparently kept my portfolio on file. She called Friday night, interviewed me Saturday morning, and here I am. Daniel was impressed despite himself. That was pure Victoria, identifying talent, moving decisively, no wasted time. What's your background? BFA in graphic design from UT Austin, 2 years doing freelance production work. Mostly taking other people's designs and preparing them for print, building out template systems, that kind of thing. I'm fast, I'm detail-oriented, and I follow instructions exactly. Ms. Langford said those were the 3 things that mattered most. She's right. Daniel pulled up his laptop. Okay, let's get you oriented. This is what we've developed so far. He spent the next 2 hours walking Riley through everything. The logo development, the website wireframes, the brand guidelines in progress, the massive scope of work ahead of them. Riley absorbed it all with quick intelligence, asking sharp questions and taking detailed notes. This is really good work, she said when he finished. Like, seriously impressive. I've seen a lot of boutique hotel brands, and most of them look like they came from the same generic template. This actually has a point of view. That's all, Victoria, Daniel said. She knows exactly what she wants. My job is just translating her vision into visual form. I don't think that's true, Riley said carefully. I saw the before images of the old brand. This is a massive leap. That's not just translation, that's transformation. Before Daniel could respond, Victoria appeared in the doorway. Riley? Good, you're here. How's the orientation going? Great, Ms. Langford. Daniel's been incredibly thorough. Good. I need to steal him for a few hours. There's a property in Fort Worth I want him to see. Riley, there's a desk being set up for you in the bullpen, 2nd floor, northwest corner. Amanda will get you sorted with equipment and access. Daniel, we leave in 10 minutes. She disappeared as quickly as she'd arrived. Riley looked at Daniel with wide eyes. Does she always move that fast? Always, Daniel confirmed. Get used to it. The drive to Fort Worth took 90 minutes. Victoria pushing the Tesla through highway traffic with the same controlled efficiency she brought to everything. They talked about the El Paso setback. She'd already identified 3 alternative properties and had meetings scheduled for later that week. The loss still stung, but she'd channeled the frustration into forward motion. "This is what I'm good at," she said as they crossed into Fort Worth. "Adapting, pivoting, finding new paths when the original one gets blocked. Most people freeze when things don't go according to plan. I accelerate." The Fort Worth property was a converted 1920s department store in the Sundance Square district. Elegant Art Deco details, soaring ceilings, the bones of something extraordinary buried under decades of neglect. They met with the property manager, who walked them through the ongoing renovation work. Victoria narrated as they toured, pointing out architectural details that would be preserved, explaining how the modern interventions would complement rather than compete with the original design. Daniel took photographs, made notes, absorbed the space into his understanding of what Langford hospitality meant. In what would eventually become the lobby bar, Victoria stopped in front of a wall where the original terrazzo flooring had been uncovered during demolition. "Look at this," she said, crouching down to run her hand over the intricate pattern. 90 years old, buried under cheap carpet for decades. Someone thought covering this up was an improvement. Can you imagine? Daniel knelt beside her, studying the geometric design in shades of cream and forest green. "It's beautiful. You're preserving it?" "Of course. This is what I mean about honoring history. This floor has more character than anything we could install new. It tells a story." She looked at him, and he was struck by the passion in her expression, the way her carefully controlled exterior cracked when she talked about these buildings. "You really love this," he said quietly. "Not just the business of it, the actual work of preservation and transformation." "These buildings are still alive," Victoria said, her voice soft with something like reverence. "They were built by people who cared about craft, about beauty, about creating spaces that would outlast them. When I restore them, I'm having a conversation with those long-dead craftsmen. I'm saying, I see what you built, I understand what you valued, and I'm going to make sure it survives." It was the most unguarded thing she'd ever said to him. Daniel felt the weight of that trust, the privilege of seeing this part of her that she kept hidden from most of the world. "That's what the logo needs to communicate," he said. "Not just transformation, conversation across time." Victoria stood, brushing dust from her hands. "Exactly. You're getting it now, really getting it." They spent another hour at the property, Victoria introducing him to the construction crew, explaining the technical challenges of integrating modern building systems into historical structures. The workers clearly respected her, not just as the person who signed their paychecks, but as someone who understood and valued what they did. On the drive back, Victoria was quieter than usual. Daniel could feel her thinking, processing something. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said finally. "Sure." "Last night, at the taco truck, you said you're not optimistic, just stubborn. Do you ever resent that? Having to keep pushing forward because giving up isn't an option?" Daniel considered the question. "Sometimes, especially in the early days after Rebecca died. There were mornings when I woke up, and the weight of just existing felt unbearable. But I'd hear Emma calling for me from her room, and that was it. I had to get up, had to make breakfast, had to be present. The resentment faded eventually, or maybe I just got used to it." "But you're happy now. With your life?" "I'm content," Daniel said carefully. "I have Emma. I have work I'm proud of. I have moments of joy mixed in with the regular struggles. That feels like enough. But happy?" He paused. "I'm not sure I know what that means anymore. Rebecca's death recalibrated my entire understanding of what happiness looks like." Victoria nodded slowly. "I think I understand that. After my divorce, I had to redefine what success meant. Before, I thought it meant having everything: career, relationship, perfect work-life balance. After, I realized that was a myth. You can have different things in different seasons. Right now, my season is work. Maybe that changes someday. Maybe it doesn't." "Do you want it to change?" She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. Building this company gives me purpose. It fulfills something in me that nothing else ever has. But it's also lonely, and lately I've been wondering if I've built a life that only has room for one thing." You could make room, Daniel said gently, if you wanted to. Could I, though? I work 70-hour weeks. I travel constantly. I'm demanding and difficult, and I've structured my entire existence around this company. What kind of relationship could survive that? The right one, Daniel said. Someone who understands what you're building and why it matters. Someone who doesn't need you to be less than you are. Victoria glanced at him, something vulnerable in her expression. Is that what you had? With your wife? Yeah, Rebecca understood my work, encouraged it. She never made me feel guilty for the late nights or the creative obsessions. She just got it. That's what I miss most. Having someone who understood me completely and loved me anyway. They were approaching Austin now, the skyline visible in the distance. Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I envy that, she said quietly. I've never had that with anyone. Every relationship I've tried has ended the same way, them asking me to choose between them and my work. And I always choose the work. Because it's what matters to you. Because it's what I know how to do. Work makes sense, relationships don't. Daniel looked at her profile. The strong jawline, the focused eyes, the tension in her shoulders that never quite released. Relationships are just another kind of work. Different skills, same principle. You invest time, you navigate obstacles, you build something that matters. That sounds exhausting. So does running a $42 million company, but you do that just fine. Victoria laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Fair point. They pulled into the Frost Tower garage, and Victoria killed the engine but didn't immediately get out. They sat in the dim parking structure, the quiet settling around them. Thank you, Victoria said, for coming today, for listening last night, for being someone I can talk to about things that aren't just work. That's what friends do, Daniel said, echoing his words from the night before. Right, friends. Victoria's voice was odd, like she was testing the word. Then she shook her head slightly and opened the door. See you tomorrow. We have the brand guidelines review at 9. Daniel watched her walk to the elevator, briefcase in hand, posture perfect despite the long day. He sat in his car for a few extra minutes, trying to identify the strange feeling in his chest. It felt dangerously close to longing. December arrived with unseasonably cold weather and the first real deadline crunch. The website needed to be in development by January 1st, which meant Daniel had 3 weeks to finalize all design specs, content strategy, and user experience flows. He worked late every night, Riley handling the production details while he focused on the bigger picture. Emma noticed, of course. She was too perceptive not to. Are you always going to be this busy? She asked one evening while he made dinner, his laptop open on the counter so he could review wireframes between stirring pasta. Just until April, Daniel promised. Then things will calm down. That's what you said last week. She wasn't wrong. He'd been saying just until for over a month now, pushing deadlines back, promising normalcy that never quite arrived. Daniel closed the laptop and crouched down to her eye level. You're right. I've been working too much. How about this? Saturday, you and me, whatever you want to do. No laptop, no phone calls, just us. Deal? Emma's face lit up. Can we go to the Science Museum and get ice cream after? Absolutely. It's a date. Saturday came and Daniel kept his promise. They spent the morning at the museum, Emma dragging him from exhibit to exhibit with exhausting enthusiasm. They had lunch at her favorite burger place, then got ice cream despite the cold weather. It was the first full day in weeks that Daniel hadn't thought about work more than a few times. That evening, after Emma fell asleep, Daniel's phone rang. Victoria. I know it's Saturday, she said immediately, and I know you have boundaries, but I need to show you something. Are you free for an hour? Daniel should have said no, should have protected the time he'd just promised to keep separate from work. But he heard something in Victoria's voice. Excitement, maybe, or urgency. Give me 30 minutes to make sure my mom can come sit with Emma. Thank you. I'll text you the address. 20 minutes later, his mother arrived with her knitting and a knowing look. This is becoming a pattern, sweetheart. It's just work, Mom. Mm-hmm. And she couldn't wait until Monday because she's Victoria Langford and waiting isn't in her vocabulary. His mother smiled. Just be careful, Daniel. I see how you talk about her, how you light up when you mention working together. Just be careful. I am, Daniel said, but the words felt hollow. The address Victoria had sent was in an older neighborhood near the University of Texas campus. Tree-lined streets, bungalows from the 1930s, the kind of area where professors and artists lived. Daniel parked in front of a charming craftsman-style house with a deep front porch and pulled out his phone to text that he'd arrived. Before he could, the front door opened and Victoria appeared. She was wearing jeans. Daniel had never seen her in jeans before. Always professional attire, always perfectly put together. But tonight she wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, and she looked almost like a different person. "Come in," she called from the porch. Daniel climbed the steps, confused. "Is this your house?" "It could be. I'm considering buying it. I wanted your opinion." She led him inside, and Daniel understood immediately why she'd called him. The house was beautiful. Original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, a fireplace with hand-painted tile, windows that let in floods of natural light. It had the same bones of something extraordinary quality as all her properties. "The owners are motivated sellers," Victoria explained as they walked through. "It needs work. Updated kitchen, new bathrooms, refinished floors. But the structure is sound. I could have it renovated in 3 months." "It's perfect," Daniel said, running his hand along the crown molding. "Why did you need my opinion?" Victoria stopped in what would be the living room, looking around the empty space. "Because I've never bought a house before. The condo I live in now, I purchased it because it was convenient to the office, and I needed somewhere to sleep. But this," she gestured around them, "this would be a home, an actual home, and I don't know if I remember how to do that." The vulnerability in her admission caught Daniel off guard. "What made you start looking?" "You did." Daniel stared at her. "What?" Victoria met his eyes. "After our conversation in the car about making room for things besides work, I started thinking, maybe I've been living in a way that doesn't actually serve me. Maybe having a home instead of just a place to sleep would change something. So I called a realtor, looked at 12 properties. This is the only one that felt right." They stood in the empty living room, the late afternoon light slanting through the windows, and Daniel felt the air shift between them again. That same charged quality from the taco truck, from the office, from every moment when Victoria let her guard down. "You should buy it," he said quietly. "It suits you. Solid bones, good history, ready for transformation." "That's what I thought too." Victoria's voice was soft. "I put in an offer this morning. They accepted an hour ago. It's mine as of January 1st. "That's amazing. Congratulations." "Thank you. For coming. For understanding why I wanted you to see it before anyone else." "Why did you want me to see it first?" Victoria moved closer, and Daniel's heart rate kicked up. "Because you're the one who made me realize I needed it. Because your opinion matters to me more than it probably should. Because—" She stopped, seeming to reconsider what she'd been about to say. "Because what?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because somewhere in the last 2 months, you became the person I want to share things with. Good news, bad news, middle-of-the-night spiral sessions about failed property deals. You became important." The word hung between them, weighted with everything it implied. "Victoria," Daniel started, not sure what he was going to say. She stepped back, breaking the moment. "I should let you get back to your daughter. Thank you for coming. I'll see you Monday." It was a dismissal, but gentler than usual. Daniel nodded and let himself out, his mind reeling. He sat in his car for a long time before driving home, trying to understand what had just happened. What was happening? What had been happening, probably, for weeks now. This slow shift from professional respect to something more complicated, more dangerous. When he got home, his mother took one look at his face and set down her knitting. "Careful, you said," she reminded him gently. "I know," Daniel said. "I know." But careful was becoming increasingly difficult when Victoria Langford kept showing him pieces of herself that no one else got to see. The careful distance Daniel tried to maintain after that Saturday evening lasted exactly 3 days. Monday morning, he arrived at the office determined to keep things strictly professional. He reviewed website mock-ups with Riley, attended a conference call with the development team, and managed to avoid Victoria's office entirely until she summoned him at 2 o'clock with a terse message from Amanda. When he entered, she was standing at her window, looking out at the Austin skyline with an expression he couldn't read. Close the door, she said without turning around. Daniel closed it, his pulse quickening. Is something wrong? That depends. Victoria turned to face him, and he was struck by the directness of her gaze. Saturday night, after you left the house, did I make you uncomfortable? No, Daniel said honestly. Confused, maybe, but not uncomfortable. Confused how? He took a breath, weighing honesty against self-preservation. Confused about what's happening here, between us. We started as employer and employee, then we became something like friends, and now... He trailed off, unsure how to finish. And now it feels like it's becoming something else, Victoria finished quietly. I know, I feel it too. The admission hung in the air between them, undeniable now that it had been spoken aloud. Victoria, I work for you. There's a power dynamic here that makes this complicated. I'm aware. She moved away from the window, leaning against her desk. Which is why I've been trying to ignore it for the past month, telling myself it's just professional respect, just the natural rapport that develops during intensive creative collaboration. But I don't think that's true anymore. Daniel's heart was pounding. What do you think it is? I think I've started to care about you in a way that has nothing to do with work. I think about you when I shouldn't. I call you when I could handle things alone because I want to hear your voice. I showed you that house because some part of me wanted you to see where I might build a life that has room for more than just the company. She paused. And I think you feel something similar, or you wouldn't have driven across town on a Saturday night to look at an empty house with me. She was right, and they both knew it. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, trying to organize thoughts that felt scattered and dangerous. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Rebecca died, he said quietly. For 3 years, I couldn't imagine being interested in someone new, and then you showed up at that restaurant, and everything shifted. But Victoria, this is my career. This project could change everything for me professionally. If we cross this line and it goes wrong... I know, Victoria interrupted. Believe me, I've thought about all the ways this could blow up. But I've also thought about the alternative. Spending the next 3 months pretending I don't feel what I feel, maintaining a distance that's starting to feel dishonest. And that doesn't seem sustainable either. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, this brilliant, guarded woman who'd somehow let him pass the walls she'd built around herself. So what do we do? I don't know, Victoria admitted. I've never been in this situation before. I don't have relationships with people I work with. I don't let professional and personal mix. But with you? She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. With you? I don't seem to have a choice. You've already become part of both. Before Daniel could respond, his phone buzzed. His mother calling about Emma's dentist appointment tomorrow. The reminder of his daughter, his responsibilities, the life he'd built that couldn't afford impulsive decisions. I need to take this, he said apologetically. Victoria nodded, and he stepped into the hallway, his hands shaking slightly as he answered. The conversation with his mother was brief, just confirming pickup time and asking if Emma needed new toothpaste. But it grounded Daniel back in reality. Whatever was developing with Victoria, it wasn't just about the two of them. Emma had to be part of any equation involving his personal life. When he returned to Victoria's office, she'd moved back to her desk, her professional mask sliding back into place. I have a proposal, she said before he could speak. We finish the project. We maintain appropriate professional boundaries until the launch in April. And then, when you're no longer actively working for me on a daily basis, we revisit this conversation. See if what we're feeling survives outside the intensity of a deadline-driven collaboration. It was practical, measured, exactly the kind of solution Victoria Langford would devise. It was also agonizing. That's 3.5 months away, Daniel said. I know, but it's the smart choice, the careful choice. And we both have too much to lose by being reckless. She was right. Daniel knew she was right. But some part of him wanted to be reckless anyway, wanted to say that 3.5 months felt like an eternity when he'd already spent 3 years in emotional isolation. Instead, he nodded. Okay, professional boundaries until April. Then we figure out what this is. Thank you, Victoria said quietly, for understanding, for being willing to wait. Are you sure you can wait? Daniel asked, trying for levity. Patience isn't exactly your strong suit. Her smile was brief but genuine. For you? I think I can learn, Nas. If Daniel had thought maintaining professional boundaries would make things easier, he was spectacularly wrong. Instead, the enforced distance only heightened his awareness of Victoria. The way she moved through the office, the sound of her voice during conference calls, the moments when their eyes met across a meeting room and they both had to look away. The work itself became a form of exquisite torture. They spent hours together reviewing designs, debating strategy, pushing each other toward better solutions. Every conversation was simultaneously professional and intimate. Every shared success felt like foreplay for a relationship they'd agreed not to start. Christmas approached, and the office took on a festive atmosphere that felt surreal against the intensity of their deadline push. Amanda decorated the reception area with understated elegance, a single perfect tree, white lights, silver ornaments. Victoria allowed it, but didn't participate. Her focus laser-locked on the April launch. Daniel bought Emma an elaborate dinosaur set she'd been requesting for months, and spent Christmas morning on his living room floor, building prehistoric scenes while his daughter narrated elaborate extinction events. His mother came over for dinner, and they had a quiet celebration that felt both comfortable and slightly melancholic. "You seem distracted, sweetheart," his mother said while Emma was occupied with her new toys. "Just thinking about the project. Big deadline coming up." She gave him a look that suggested she knew exactly what or who he was actually thinking about, but mercifully didn't push. The day after Christmas, Daniel's phone rang at 9 p.m. "Victoria, I'm at the new house," she said. "The renovation just started and I wanted to walk through before the contractors arrive tomorrow. I know we said professional boundaries, but would you want to see it? The before state, I mean, so you can understand the transformation." Daniel should have said no, should have protected the boundaries they'd established, but he heard the loneliness underneath her invitation, the echo of his own need for connection during the strange liminal space between Christmas and New Year. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emma was asleep. His mother was already staying over from earlier. He drove through quiet Austin streets to the Craftsman House, where Victoria's Tesla was parked out front and lights glowed from inside. She met him at the door wearing jeans and an old UT sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked younger like this, less armored. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know I shouldn't have called." "I'm glad you did." They walked through the house together, Victoria pointing out everything that would change, the kitchen getting gutted and rebuilt, the bathrooms completely modernized, the floors refinished, the exterior painted. Her vision for it was clear and compelling, transforming the dated but charming space into something that honored its history while making it livable for contemporary life. In what would become the master bedroom, she stopped in front of the windows overlooking the backyard. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about having someone who understands you completely and loves you anyway. I want that. I've spent so long convincing myself I didn't need it, that work was enough. But it's not. Not anymore." Daniel moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain distance even as everything in him wanted to close it. "What changed?" "You did. You showed me what it looks like when someone balances ambition with connection. You work as hard as I do, but you still make time for your daughter, for your mother, for friendship. You proved it's possible to care deeply about your work without sacrificing everything else." "I don't know if I'd say I balance it well," Daniel said. "Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "But you are holding it together. That's what matters." Victoria turned to face him. "Daniel, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Can you do that?" He nodded, his throat tight. "When I watched you in that restaurant back in October, waiting for someone who never showed up, I saw someone who refused to let circumstances break him. That impressed me professionally. But over these past 2 months, I've learned who you actually are. You're kind without being weak. You're creative without being precious about your ideas. You challenge me without diminishing me. You make me want to be better, not just at work, but as a person." She took a breath. "And I'm falling in love with you. I've been fighting it, but I don't think I can anymore." The words landed like an earthquake, reshaping everything. "Victoria, I know we agreed to wait," she continued quickly, "and I'm still willing to wait. But I needed you to know. I'm done pretending this is just respect or friendship or creative partnership. This is more. It's been more for weeks now." Daniel's carefully maintained control crumbled. I'm falling in love with you too. I have been since you challenged me on those first logo concepts, since you showed me your properties and trusted me to understand your vision, since you called me at midnight about a failed deal and let me see you vulnerable. Every day I work with you is incredible and excruciating because I want this, us, and I'm terrified of wanting it. Why terrified? Because I already lost someone I loved. Because I have a daughter who needs stability. Because you're brilliant and driven and you could have anyone and I'm just... Stop, Victoria said firmly. You're not just anything. You're exactly who I need. Someone who understands that loving me means accepting that my work isn't separate from who I am. Someone who won't ask me to choose between my company and a relationship because they understand it's a false choice. They stood inches apart now, the tension between them electric and undeniable. We should wait, Daniel said, but his voice was unconvincing even to himself. Like we agreed. We should, Victoria agreed, but I don't want to. Neither do I. The first kiss was inevitable, necessary, like a conversation they'd been having for months finally reaching its conclusion. Victoria's lips were soft against his, her hands coming up to frame his face, and Daniel felt 3 years of loneliness and isolation crack open into something that felt terrifyingly like hope. They pulled apart after a moment, both breathing hard. This complicates everything, Daniel said. I know. The project, the professional relationship, all of it. I know. We should probably talk about boundaries and expectations and how this works practically. We should, Victoria agreed. Tomorrow. Right now, I just want... She kissed him again, and Daniel stopped trying to be sensible. They'd spent weeks being careful, being professional, maintaining distance. For tonight, in this empty house that represented the possibility of transformation, they could just be two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate loneliness. Later, sitting on the floor in the empty living room with their backs against the wall, Victoria's head on his shoulder, Daniel felt simultaneously peaceful and terrified. What happens now? He asked. I don't know. I've never done this before. Fallen for someone I work with. Let someone get this close. Wanted something this much outside of business. We'll figure it out, Daniel said, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. We're both smart people. We can navigate this. What about Emma? Have you thought about how you'll explain this to her? The question made Daniel's chest tighten. I'll need to go slowly, make sure she's comfortable with the idea of me dating someone. She's young, but she's perceptive. She'll have questions. I have no experience with children, Victoria said quietly. I don't know how to be part of that aspect of your life. You don't have to have all the answers right now. We'll take it slow. Let Emma get to know you gradually, in comfortable contexts. No pressure. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What if I'm terrible at it? What if she doesn't like me? Then we'll figure that out too. But Victoria, Emma's incredible and you're incredible. I think you'll surprise yourself. They sat in comfortable silence, the empty house settling around them, and Daniel tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, he focused on the warmth of Victoria against him, the feeling of being wanted for exactly who he was, the possibility that maybe, finally, he could have both meaningful work and meaningful connection. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Everything okay? You've been gone a while. Daniel checked the time. Nearly midnight. I should get back. Mom's staying with Emma, but I don't want to take advantage. They stood, and Victoria walked him to the door. On the porch, she caught his hand. Daniel, I meant what I said about falling in love with you. I meant it too. I'm scared, she admitted, so quietly he almost didn't hear. Me too. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means it matters. He kissed her once more, gentle and brief, then drove home through the December night with his heart full of equal parts joy and terror. The next 2 weeks existed in a strange dual reality. Professionally, nothing changed. They continued working intensely on the rebrand, hitting deadlines, pushing toward the April launch. But personally, everything was different. Stolen moments in Victoria's office after everyone else had left. Late-night phone calls that had nothing to do with work. Text messages that made Daniel smile at inappropriate times during meetings. They were careful, discreet, maintaining the appearance of professional distance during office hours. But the energy between them had shifted, and Daniel suspected people were starting to notice. Riley certainly noticed. One afternoon in mid-January, while they were reviewing print specifications, she looked up at him with a knowing expression. "So, you and Ms. Langford." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What about us? Come on. I see how you look at each other when you think no one's watching. How her whole demeanor changes when you walk into a room. I'm not judging. I think it's kind of great, actually. But you might want to be more subtle if you're trying to keep it quiet." "We're not," Daniel started, then stopped. "It's complicated." "It always is," Riley grinned. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for her. She's less terrifying lately, still demanding, still brilliant, but there's something softer there. That's you." "I don't know if that's true. Trust me, it is. Everyone's noticed. Victoria Langford smiling during meetings? That's unprecedented." The conversation made Daniel uneasy. If Riley had noticed, others probably had too. They needed to be more careful, or they needed to be honest about what was happening. The middle ground was becoming untenable. That evening, he brought it up with Victoria over dinner at a quiet restaurant far enough from downtown that they were unlikely to run into anyone from the office. "People are starting to figure it out," he said. Riley commented today. "Others probably suspect." Victoria set down her wine glass. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks we should just be honest, tell people we're seeing each other, deal with whatever reactions come. But part of me worries about how that affects the project, the professional dynamics, everything we've built." "The project launches in 10 weeks, Victoria said. "After that, your day-to-day involvement decreases significantly. Maybe we wait until then to go public." "More waiting," Daniel said with a slight smile. "You really have learned patience. For you, apparently, I have infinite patience, which is new and slightly disturbing." They talked through the practicalities, keeping things quiet for another 10 weeks, then gradually letting people know they were together once the professional intensity decreased. It was reasonable, careful, everything they'd been trying to be. But reasonable and careful was becoming increasingly difficult when all Daniel wanted was to stop hiding how he felt. "There's something else we need to talk about," Victoria said, her expression growing serious. "Emma, I think it's time I met her properly. Not as your boss, but as someone who's part of your life." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Are you sure? There's no rush." "I'm sure. If this is going to work, I mean, then I need to be part of your whole life, not just the professional part. And your whole life includes a 6-year-old who means everything to you. I want to know her. I want her to know me." The vulnerability in Victoria's voice made Daniel's chest ache. "She's having a birthday party in 2 weeks. Just family and a few school friends, nothing elaborate. You could come to that. Meet her in a low-pressure context." "As your friend?" Victoria asked. "As my friend who happens to be my boss." "We'll keep it light. Let her get used to you being around. Then later, when the time feels right, we can explain that you're more than just a friend." Victoria nodded slowly. "I want to get her a gift." "What does she like?" "Dinosaurs, science experiments, books about space. She's obsessed with paleontology lately. Wants to be the person who discovers a new species of dinosaur." For the first time since they'd started this conversation, Victoria smiled. "I think I can work with that." Dead. Emma's 7th birthday party was held at Daniel's house on a Saturday afternoon in late January. His mother had helped with decorations, dinosaur-themed everything, green and purple streamers, a cake shaped like a triceratops. 10 children ran through the house with the kind of chaotic energy that made Daniel grateful he'd moved all breakable objects to high shelves. Victoria arrived precisely on time, carrying a carefully wrapped gift and looking slightly terrified. She'd dressed down, jeans and a simple sweater, but still managed to look elegant in a way that made the other parents do double takes. "You came," Daniel said, answering the door. "I said I would." She lowered her voice. "I'm completely out of my depth here. I don't know how to talk to children. Just be yourself." "Emma's pretty easy to talk to. She never stops talking, actually, so you mostly just have to listen and look interested." Emma appeared behind him, chocolate frosting already smeared across her face. "Daddy, can we do the piñata now? Please, please, please?" "Soon, sweetheart. First, there's someone I want you to meet. This is my friend Victoria. She works with me." Emma looked up at Victoria with open curiosity. "You're really tall." Victoria blinked, clearly not sure how to respond. "I am. You're very observant. Are you the boss Daddy talks about sometimes? Yes, I am. He says you're really smart and kind of scary. Daniel felt his face flush. Emma, I didn't exactly, but Victoria laughed, genuine and surprised. He's right. I am pretty scary sometimes, but only when people aren't doing their best work. Your dad always does his best work, so I don't have to be scary with him. Emma considered this, then nodded. Okay. Do you want cake? It's a dinosaur. I saw. It's an excellent dinosaur. I brought you a present, if that's okay. Emma's eyes widened, and she looked at Daniel for permission. He nodded, and she carefully took the wrapped package from Victoria, settling on the floor to open it. Inside was a professional-grade rock tumbling kit and a book about famous paleontological discoveries, along with a handwritten note that read, "For the future discoverer of important dinosaurs. Keep looking, keep learning. V." Emma's face lit up. This is so cool! Daddy, look, I can polish my own rocks. That's amazing, sweetie. What do you say? Thank you. Emma threw her arms around Victoria's legs in an impulsive hug. Victoria looked startled, her hands hovering uncertainly before she gently patted Emma's back. When she met Daniel's eyes over his daughter's head, her expression was a mix of terror and something softer. The rest of the party passed in a blur of cake and presents and children's games. Victoria stayed for all of it, sitting on the periphery and watching with quiet fascination. Daniel saw her taking mental notes, observing the chaos of family life with the same focused attention she brought to property evaluations. After the other guests left and Emma was occupied showing her new rock tumbler to Daniel's mother, Victoria helped Daniel clean up the kitchen. That was intense, she said, throwing away paper plates. That was actually pretty tame for a kid's party. No injuries, no major meltdowns. I consider it a success. She's wonderful. Emma, I mean. She's smart and funny and completely uninhibited in the best way. She liked you, Daniel said. That hug at the end, she doesn't do that with people she doesn't feel comfortable around. Really? Victoria looked genuinely pleased. I was terrified I'd say something wrong and traumatize her. You did great. The gift was perfect, by the way. How did you know about the rock tumbler? I called your mother, asked what Emma might like. She was very helpful. Victoria paused, and very clear that if I hurt either of you, she would make me regret it. Daniel laughed. That sounds like her. I appreciated it, actually. Emma's lucky to have people who protect her so fiercely. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, and when Daniel walked Victoria to her car, the winter sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Thank you for coming, Daniel said. I know this isn't your usual Saturday afternoon activity. It was good. Overwhelming, but good. I see why you organize your entire life around her. She's worth it. She is. Victoria opened her car door, then paused. Daniel, I think I could do this, be part of this. Your life, Emma, all of it. I'm not saying I'll be perfect at it, but I want to try. That's all I need, someone willing to try. She kissed him quickly, aware that his mother could probably see them from the house, then drove away. Daniel stood in his driveway, watching her taillights disappear, and felt something settle in his chest. The sense that maybe, impossibly, all the pieces of his life were starting to fit together in a way he'd stopped believing was possible. Inside, Emma was showing his mother the rock tumbler for the third time, her enthusiasm undimmed. I like your friend Victoria, Emma announced when Daniel came back in. She's nice, and she knows about dinosaurs. I'm glad you liked her, sweetheart. Is she going to come over again? Daniel exchanged a glance with his mother, who raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Maybe, he said carefully. Would that be okay with you? Emma shrugged, already losing interest in the conversation. Sure, can we start tumbling rocks tomorrow? Absolutely. Later, after Emma was in bed and his mother had gone home, Daniel sat in his living room surrounded by the detritus of the party, wrapping paper, deflated balloons, the demolished dinosaur cake, and thought about the strange journey that had led him here. 4 months ago, he'd been waiting alone in a restaurant, humiliated and lonely. Now he had meaningful work, a connection with someone extraordinary, and the fragile beginning of something that felt like it could be the rest of his life. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Thank you for today, for letting me into that part of your world. Emma is incredible, and you're an amazing father. Sleep well. Daniel, thank you for the perfect gift and for being brave enough to wade into birthday party chaos. You were amazing today. Victoria, I was terrified. Daniel, I know, but you showed up anyway. That's what matters. There was a pause, then, I love you. I know we haven't said it out loud yet, but I do. Just needed you to know. Daniel stared at the message, his heart expanding. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Victoria, fear means it matters. You told me that once. Daniel, I did, didn't I? Smart guy. Victoria, the smartest. Now get some sleep. We have a launch to finish. Daniel went to bed that night with a smile on his face and hope in his heart, no longer afraid of the future, but eager to see what came next. The weeks between Emma's birthday and the April launch passed in a controlled frenzy of activity that left Daniel exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. February brought the final design approvals. March consumed itself in production and quality control, and by early April, every piece was falling into place with the precision of a well-executed symphony. Through it all, Daniel and Victoria maintained their careful public distance, while their private relationship deepened in stolen moments. Late evenings at her house after Emma was asleep, where they'd review mock-ups on her couch and end up talking about everything except work. Weekend mornings when Victoria would join them for pancakes, gradually becoming a familiar presence that Emma accepted with the easy adaptability of childhood. Quick kisses in Victoria's office after everyone had left for the day, the city lights of Austin spreading below them like promises. But the secrecy was wearing on Daniel. He'd never been good at deception, even benign deception, and the constant awareness of managing perceptions was exhausting. More than once, Riley had given him knowing looks that suggested their discretion wasn't as effective as they'd hoped. The breaking point came 3 weeks before launch. Daniel was in a meeting with Victoria, Riley, and the leadership team presenting the final website design. Everything was going smoothly until Marcus Chen, the director of operations whom Victoria had hired 2 years ago, made an offhand comment. These designs are exceptional. Daniel, you've really gone above and beyond. I hope we're compensating you appropriately for the extra hours you've clearly been putting in. It was innocent, professional. But something about the way he said it, the slight emphasis on above and beyond, made Daniel's stomach tighten. The compensation has been more than fair, Daniel said carefully. I'm sure it has been. Marcus smiled, but there was an edge to it. Ms. Langford takes care of the people she values. The comment hung in the air, just ambiguous enough to be deniable, but pointed enough to make its implications clear. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Daniel saw her jaw tighten. I value all my team members, Marcus, she said coolly. Daniel has earned every penny through the quality of his work, unless you have specific concerns about the project budget. No, of course not. Just making an observation. The meeting continued, but the damage was done. Afterward, Victoria pulled Daniel aside in her office, her controlled exterior cracking to reveal fury underneath. He knows, she said flatly, or suspects, and he's testing to see how we react. Oh, does it matter? Daniel asked, suddenly tired of the whole charade. We're 3 weeks from launch. After that, I'm transitioning to a reduced consulting role. The intensive collaboration ends. Why are we still hiding this? Victoria paced to the window, her shoulders tight with tension. Because I need to maintain credibility. Because people are already going to question whether I gave you this project because of personal feelings rather than professional merit. Because you're scared, Daniel finished quietly. Not of what people will think about the work, but of what it means to publicly acknowledge that Victoria Langford has something in her life besides the company. She turned to face him, and he saw vulnerability flash across her features before she could hide it. Yes, I'm scared. I've built everything in my life on being untouchable, impenetrable, completely focused on business. Admitting that I've fallen in love with someone, that feels like admitting weakness. It's not weakness, it's being human. In my world, they're often the same thing. Victoria moved closer to him, her voice dropping. You don't understand what it's like to be a woman running a company this size. Every decision I make is scrutinized. Every relationship is questioned. If people think I'm being influenced by personal feelings, then they're idiots, Daniel interrupted. Victoria, you are the most rigorously professional person I've ever met. The work we've done together is exceptional because you pushed me to make it exceptional. You didn't give me special treatment. If anything, you were harder on me than you probably needed to be. Because I couldn't afford to be seen as playing favorites. I know, but we're past that now. The work speaks for itself. Let it speak.
Yes, Pops.
Oh, Victoria studied him for a long moment, then made a decision he could see forming behind her eyes. Okay, she said. After the launch. We tell people, properly. No more hiding. After the launch, Daniel agreed. What neither of them anticipated was that the decision would be taken out of their hands. 2 days later, Daniel was picking Emma up from school when his phone started blowing up with messages. First Riley. Have you seen this? Then Marcus. Then Amanda. Then people he barely knew. He pulled over to check, his heart sinking as he opened the link Riley had sent. It was a local business blog. Not major media, but influential in Austin's commercial real estate and hospitality circles. The headline made his stomach drop. Langford Hospitality's major rebrand, creative vision, or conflict of interest. The article was carefully worded to avoid direct accusations, but the implications were clear. An anonymous source had provided information about Daniel's hiring, suggesting that his relationship with Victoria had begun before the project started, that the entire arrangement was ethically questionable, that the rebrand might be more about personal favoritism than professional merit. Most of it was speculation and innuendo. But buried in the middle was a photograph, Daniel and Victoria at the taco truck that November night, sitting close, her hand on his arm. The image was grainy, clearly taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Daniel's hand shook as he read through the article. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been gathering information. And now, 3 weeks before their carefully planned launch, everything was exploding. His phone rang. Victoria. I'm handling this, she said immediately, her voice tight with controlled fury. I'm drafting a statement. My lawyer is reviewing for any potential legal action against the publication. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Someone on my team must have... It's not your fault. It is. I should have been more careful. I should have anticipated this. Victoria, stop. We knew this was a risk. We just hoped we'd get through the launch first. He glanced back at the school, where Emma was emerging with her backpack. I need to go. Emma's here, and I can't have this conversation in front of her. Can we meet tonight? My house, 8 o'clock. We need to decide how to respond. The afternoon stretched into evening like a nightmare in slow motion. Daniel tried to act normal for Emma, helped with homework, made dinner, played dinosaurs, but his mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. Would Victoria's board pressure her to fire him? Would the negative publicity damage the launch? Would his professional reputation survive this? At 7:30, his mother arrived to watch Emma. She'd clearly seen the article. How bad is it? She asked quietly while Emma brushed her teeth. Bad enough. The timing couldn't be worse. What are you going to do? I don't know. Victoria's drafting a statement, but I'm not sure a defensive response is the right move. Maybe we just tell the truth, that we started working together professionally, developed feelings over time, and handled it as ethically as we could. His mother touched his arm gently. Sweetheart, the truth is that you fell in love with an extraordinary woman who saw your talent and gave you an opportunity. There's nothing unethical about that. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of finding happiness. Daniel hugged her, grateful for the unconditional support. Thanks, Mom. Now go. Figure this out with Victoria. And remember, you've survived worse than bad press. You'll survive this too, Juan. Victoria's house was nearly finished with renovations, transformed from the empty shell he'd first seen into something warm and livable. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair down, looking more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. I'm sorry, she said immediately. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have... Daniel pulled her into a hug, cutting off the self-recrimination. Stop apologizing. We're in this together, remember? She held on to him tightly, and he felt her shaking slightly. When they finally separated, she led him to the living room where her laptop was open, multiple drafts of press statements visible on the screen. I've been trying to write something that addresses the allegations without confirming anything personal, she said, but everything sounds defensive or dishonest or both. Daniel read through the drafts. She was right. They all sounded like corporate damage control, carefully worded non-denials that would only fuel more speculation. "What if we just tell the truth?" he said. "The truth?" "All of it. When we met, how the professional relationship developed, when personal feelings emerged, how we handled the ethical considerations. Complete transparency." Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested something radical. "That's not how these things are usually handled. The standard playbook is minimize, deflect, move on. And how's that working so far?" She couldn't help but smile slightly. "Fair point. Victoria, you've built your entire company on honesty. Your properties tell honest stories about preservation and transformation. Your brand is about authenticity. Why should your personal life be any different?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "If we go public with everything, it becomes a story. Our relationship becomes part of the launch narrative. Some people will see it as romantic, others as scandalous. We lose control of how it's perceived." "We never had control," Daniel said gently. "Someone was watching us, photographing us, building a story we didn't know was being written. All we can control now is whether we respond with honesty or defensiveness." Victoria stood and walked to the window, her arms wrapped around herself. "I've spent my entire adult life maintaining perfect professional boundaries, never mixing business and personal, never giving anyone ammunition to question my judgment. And now you fell in love," Daniel finished. "That doesn't make you weak or unprofessional or any of the things you're afraid people will think. It makes you human." She turned back to face him, and he saw tears in her eyes, the first time he'd ever seen her cry. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Not of what the business community thinks, not even of potential damage to the company. I'm terrified that this will hurt you and Emma, that my choice to pursue this relationship will have consequences for the people I love most." Daniel crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Emma is fine. She likes you, she's happy when you're around, and she's too young to read business blogs. And me? I'm a grown adult who made my own choices. I knew the risks when I fell in love with you. I'm not going anywhere, even if this damages your professional reputation. My professional reputation is based on the work I do. The rebrand we created is exceptional. Anyone with eyes can see that. If some people want to dismiss it because they're uncomfortable with our relationship, that's their problem, not mine." Victoria pulled him close, resting her forehead against his. "How are you so calm about this?" "Because I've already lost the most important person in my life once. I know what real catastrophe looks like. This is just noise. We can handle noise." They spent the next 2 hours drafting a joint statement, going through multiple revisions until they found language that felt honest without being overly defensive. The final version was simple and direct. Victoria Langford and Daniel Hayes met in October when a scheduling miscommunication led to an unexpected conversation. That conversation resulted in Ms. Langford offering Mr. Hayes a professional opportunity to lead the creative rebrand of Langford Hospitality Group. Over the course of that professional collaboration, which has been conducted with complete transparency and oversight from LHG's leadership team, a personal relationship developed. Both parties handled this development with appropriate ethical consideration, maintaining professional boundaries throughout the project timeline. The rebrand launching April 15th represents 6 months of intensive creative work and stands on its own merit. We ask that it be judged as such, and we appreciate the privacy and respect of our colleagues and the community as we navigate both our professional and personal partnership. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. They released it jointly late that night, Victoria posting it to the company's website and social media, Daniel sharing it from his own professional accounts. Then they waited. The response came swiftly and from unexpected directions. The first message was from Marcus Chen, apologizing for his earlier innuendo and offering his full support. Then Riley, enthusiastically congratulating them. Then property managers and team members throughout the organization, most responding with warmth and congratulations rather than judgment. The business community's reaction was more mixed. Some columnists questioned the ethics, others praised the transparency. Most eventually concluded that as long as the work was good, the personal relationship was irrelevant, and the work was good. When the rebrand launched on April 15th, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The new visual identity captured exactly what Victoria had articulated months earlier: transformation, conversation across time, honoring history while embracing the future. Travel publications featured the redesigned properties. Design blogs praised the cohesive brand strategy. Booking numbers increased significantly in the first week. The launch party was held at the San Antonio property, the converted railway station where Daniel had first truly understood Victoria's vision. The space was packed with employees, investors, media, and community leaders. Victoria gave a speech about the rebrand, crediting her team and specifically thanking Daniel for his creative leadership. When she finished, she found him in the crowd and took his hand in full view of everyone present. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for pushing me to be brave, for believing the work could speak for itself." "It did speak for itself," Daniel replied. "You just had to trust it." The celebration continued around them, but they took a moment to step outside onto the terrace overlooking the San Antonio River. The April evening was perfect. Warm breeze, clear sky, the sound of water, and distant music. "I keep thinking about that night in October," Victoria said. "You, sitting alone in that restaurant waiting for someone who never showed up. If Sarah had actually come to that date, then none of this would have happened," Daniel finished. "I'd still be scraping by with small clients. You'd still be alone in your office at midnight, and we'd both be missing something we didn't know we needed." "Do you ever wonder what she's doing now, Sarah?" "Sometimes, but mostly I just feel grateful she didn't show up." Victoria smiled. "She reached out, 2 weeks ago. Sent me an email apologizing for the whole situation and saying she was glad it worked out the way it did." "What did you say?" "I thanked her and told her I hoped she'd found someone who made her feel brave instead of anxious." Victoria paused. "Then I may have sent her information about a really good therapist who specializes in social anxiety, because I'm still me, even when I'm being magnanimous." Daniel laughed. "That's very you." They stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the river and the city lights. Inside, the party continued, celebrating not just a rebrand, but the successful transformation of a company, and privately, the transformation of two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate loneliness. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "With us, I mean. We've made it through the crisis. The launch is successful. The relationship is public. What's next?" "Whatever we want," Daniel said simply. "We figure out what a life together looks like. We keep building, both the company and us. We make room for work and love and Emma and all the complicated, messy parts of actually living." "I'm not going to suddenly become relaxed about work," Victoria warned. "I'm still going to be demanding and driven and occasionally difficult." "I know. And I'm still going to be a single father with limited time and energy, juggling multiple responsibilities. We're not magically becoming different people. So we're just going to be our complicated selves and figure out how to make that work?" "Exactly." Victoria turned to face him fully. "I can do that. I think." "I know you can. You're Victoria Langford. You transform impossible buildings into beautiful spaces. A relationship should be easy by comparison." "I don't think relationships are ever easy." "No," Daniel agreed. "But they can be worth it." She kissed him then, soft and unhurried, with the sound of celebration drifting out from the party and the April breeze warm around them. When they pulled apart, her eyes were bright. "I love you," she said. "I don't say it enough, but I do. You changed everything for me." "You changed everything for me too," Daniel replied. Showing up at that restaurant was the best thing that never went according to plan. They rejoined the party hand in hand, no longer hiding, no longer careful about who saw them together. Riley immediately pulled Daniel aside, grinning. "So, you and the boss. How long until you move in together?" "We're taking it slow," Daniel said. "Sure you are. I give it 6 months before she's living in your place or you're in hers." "You might be right. I'm always right about these things." Riley's expression softened. "Seriously, though, I'm happy for you both. You deserve good things, Daniel. So does she." "Thanks, Riley." The evening stretched into night, and eventually the crowd thinned as people headed home or moved the celebration to nearby bars. Daniel found his mother, who'd driven down for the launch with Emma. "Grandma says we get to stay in the fancy hotel tonight," Emma announced, bouncing with excitement. "And there's a pool." "That's right, sweetheart. Is that okay with you?" "It's awesome. Can Victoria come swimming too?" Daniel glanced at Victoria, who'd appeared beside them. She looked uncertain, clearly out of her depth with the casual spontaneity of a 7-year-old's invitation. "I don't have a swimsuit," Victoria said carefully. "You can buy one," Emma said, with the confidence of someone who believed all problems had simple solutions. "They have stores here, right?" "She has a point," Daniel said, smiling at Victoria's trapped expression. "I haven't been swimming in probably 10 years, Victoria admitted. "Then you're overdue," Daniel's mother said warmly. "Come on, Victoria. You've survived a major launch party and a media scandal. A hotel pool with a 7-year-old should be simple by comparison." 45 minutes later, Victoria emerged from the hotel gift shop in a sensible one-piece swimsuit, looking more uncomfortable than Daniel had ever seen her in a business negotiation. Emma was already in the pool, showing off her swimming skills to her grandmother. "I can't believe I'm doing this," Victoria muttered as they walked toward the pool area. "You don't have to. Emma would understand if you wanted to skip it." "No, I want to. I just feel ridiculous." She paused at the pool's edge. "I don't know how to play with children, Daniel. What if I do it wrong?" "There's no wrong way. Just follow her lead." Emma spotted Victoria and immediately swam over. "Come in. The water's perfect." Victoria took a breath and stepped into the pool, her controlled exterior cracking into something approaching genuine fear as the water rose past her waist. Emma giggled and splashed gently in her direction. "Are you scared of the water?" Emma asked with a child's directness. "A little bit," Victoria admitted. "I'm not a very good swimmer." "I can teach you. I'm an excellent swimmer. My teacher said so." For the next hour, Daniel watched as his daughter patiently showed Victoria basic swimming techniques, as Victoria slowly relaxed into the playfulness of it, as Emma's unself-conscious joy gradually infected the woman who'd spent 36 years maintaining perfect professional distance from everything. His mother sat beside him on a deck chair, watching the same scene. "She's good for you," his mother said quietly, "and you're good for her. I wasn't sure at first. She seemed so closed off, so focused on work. But I see it now. She's learning how to let people in. That's because of you." "I think we're learning together," Daniel said. "How to make room for more than just survival. How to actually build a life instead of just getting through days." Rebecca would have liked her, you know. She would have appreciated that Victoria challenges you, makes you better. The mention of Rebecca didn't hurt the way it used to. Instead, Daniel felt a gentle ache, like an old wound that had finally healed enough to touch without breaking open. "I think she would have," he agreed, "and I think she'd be glad I found someone again. Someone who sees me completely and wants me anyway." His mother squeezed his hand, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching Victoria and Emma play in the pool like they'd known each other for years instead of months. 3 months after the launch, on a warm July evening, Victoria invited Daniel and Emma to see the finished renovation of her house. She'd been working on it steadily since January, overseeing every detail with the same meticulous attention she brought to her properties. Emma ran through the rooms with delight, claiming the spare bedroom with the window seat as her room for sleepovers, examining the rock tumbler she'd left there on a previous visit. Daniel walked through more slowly, noting how Victoria had created a space that balanced her aesthetic sensibility with practical warmth, beautiful but livable, sophisticated but welcoming. In the kitchen, where Victoria was making dinner, he found photographs on the refrigerator held up by magnets. One was from Emma's birthday party, another from the launch celebration, a third from their swimming adventure in San Antonio, Emma between Daniel and Victoria, all three of them laughing at something. "When did you put these up, he asked. Victoria glanced over from the stove. "Last week. I realized I'd created this beautiful house, but it felt empty. It needed people in it, memories, evidence of a life that includes more than just work. It looks good. All of it." She turned off the stove and moved closer to him. "Daniel, I've been thinking about what a life together might actually look like. Not just dating, not just stolen moments, but actually building something permanent." His heart rate kicked up. "Okay. I know it's fast. We've only been officially together for 3 months. But I'm 36 years old and I've never been more certain of anything than I am about you, about us, about wanting to build a life that includes work and family and all the complicated, beautiful, messy parts." She took a breath. "Move in with me, you and Emma. Make this a home for all three of us." Daniel felt the weight of the invitation, the significance of Victoria Langford, who'd spent her entire adult life maintaining independence, asking him to share her space, her life, everything. "That's a big step," he said carefully. "I know, and if it's too fast, we can wait. I don't want to pressure you. I just needed you to know that I'm ready. When you are. We'd need to think about logistics. Emma's school, my work setup, how we split expenses, all solvable problems," Victoria interrupted. "The only question that matters is whether you want this, whether you can see a future here." Daniel looked around the kitchen, imagining mornings making Emma breakfast, evenings cooking dinner with Victoria, weekends spent as a family in this beautiful house she'd created. He thought about the past 9 months, how a failed date had transformed into the most important relationship of his life, how professional collaboration had evolved into something so much deeper. "I can see it," he said quietly. "I want it, but I need to talk to Emma first, make sure she's comfortable with such a big change." "Of course, take whatever time you need." That night, after dinner, Daniel sat with Emma on the back porch while Victoria cleaned up inside. "So, how do you like Victoria's house?" he asked. "I love it. My room has a window seat, and the backyard is perfect for digging for fossils. What if I told you we might be able to live here? You and me and Victoria, all together." Emma's eyes widened. "Like a family?" "Sort of, yeah. Would that be okay with you?" She was quiet for a moment, her small face serious with thought. "Would Victoria be like my new mom?" Daniel's chest tightened. "Victoria could never replace your mom, sweetheart. Nobody could. But she could be someone who loves you and takes care of you and is part of our family. If you want that. Would she still be around if we don't live here? Or would she go away? She'll always be around. She loves us. Living together just means we get to see her every day instead of sometimes." Emma nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that. She's nice, and she knows about dinosaurs. And she tries really hard even when she doesn't know how to do kid stuff." Daniel pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed with love for this small person who'd been so resilient through so much change. "You're pretty amazing, you know that?" "I know," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Can we tell her yes now?" "Let's tell her yes now." They found Victoria in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with focused concentration that Daniel recognized as nervous energy. She looked up when they entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Emma has something to tell you," Daniel said. Emma walked up to Victoria solemnly. "We want to live here with you, and you can be part of our family, if you want." Victoria crouched down to Emma's eye level, and Daniel saw her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I would love that more than anything. Thank you for sharing your dad with me, and for letting me be part of your family." "You're welcome. Can I go look at my room again?" "Absolutely." Emma ran off, already planning where her dinosaur collection would go, and Victoria stood letting Daniel pull her into his arms. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "Taking on a ready-made family, all the chaos and complications that come with it?" "I've never been more sure of anything. You're not taking on complications, Victoria. You're choosing love. There's a difference." She kissed him, soft and lingering. "When do you want to do this? Move in?" "Soon. Maybe next month. Gives us time to pack, let Emma finish summer camp, make the transition gradual." "Next month," Victoria agreed. "Our life starts next month." The actual moving day in August was exactly as chaotic as Daniel had anticipated. Boxes everywhere, furniture being rearranged multiple times as Victoria's organizational systems clashed with the reality of fitting 2 additional people into her carefully designed space, Emma helping by unpacking her toys in every room simultaneously. But by evening, when they ordered pizza because nobody had energy to cook and sat on the floor of the living room surrounded by half-empty boxes, it felt right. It felt like home. "This is insane," Victoria said, looking around at the controlled chaos. 3 months ago, I lived alone in a perfect organized space. Now there are dinosaurs on my coffee table, and I can't find half my books." "Having regrets?" Daniel asked. She looked at him, then at Emma, who was building an elaborate fortress out of empty moving boxes. "Not even for a second." Over the following weeks, they established new rhythms, morning routines that got Emma to school and both adults to work, evenings where Victoria learned to cook kid-friendly meals while Daniel handled homework help, weekends where they explored Austin as a family. Victoria proved surprisingly adaptable once she accepted that perfect organization was incompatible with a 7-year-old's existence. Emma, for her part, blossomed with the expanded attention. She taught Victoria about different dinosaur species with professorial seriousness. Victoria took her to science museums and bookstores, fostering her curiosity with the same intensity she brought to her properties. One Saturday in September, Daniel came home from a grocery run to find Victoria and Emma in the backyard, both covered in dirt, excavating what Emma insisted was definitely going to be a major paleontological discovery. "We're scientists," Emma announced proudly. "Victoria knows all about geology." "I know about foundation work and soil composition," Victoria corrected. "But apparently that translates to fossil hunting." Daniel watched them work together, Victoria patiently showing Emma how to carefully brush away dirt, and felt his heart expand with gratitude for this impossible, wonderful life they'd built. That evening, after Emma went to bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on their back porch with glasses of wine, watching fireflies drift through the warm Texas night. "I've been thinking about something," Victoria said. "The company is expanding faster than I anticipated. The rebrand was so successful that we're getting acquisition offers for properties I hadn't even considered. Colorado, New Mexico, potentially Arizona. That's amazing." "It is, but it also means more travel, more time away from home, from you and Emma." She paused. "I need to hire a chief operating officer, someone who can handle day-to-day operations while I focus on strategic direction, someone I trust completely." "That sounds like a good decision. There's more. I want to restructure my ownership, set up a trust that ensures if anything happens to me, my shares go to causes I care about, historic preservation, arts education, that kind of thing. And I want to make sure you and Emma are taken care of, financially secure no matter what." Daniel set down his wine glass. "Victoria, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. You and Emma are my family now. I want that to mean something concrete, not just emotional." She took his hand. "I also want to talk about making it official. Not right away, but eventually. Marriage, I mean." The word hung in the air between them, weighted with everything it implied. "You want to get married?" Daniel asked, his voice careful. "Eventually. When it feels right. I know I'm not the easiest person to be with. I'm demanding. I work too much. I'm still learning how to balance everything. But I love you. I love Emma. I want to build a life where we're legally, officially, permanently connected, if that's something you want too." While Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a humiliating failed date to professional collaboration to this moment, sitting on their shared porch, talking about forever. "I want that," he said quietly. "Not because I need a legal document to know you're committed, but because I want to stand in front of everyone we know and promise to keep choosing you, keep building this with you, for as long as we both live." Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes. Eventual yes. When it feels right, yes." She kissed him, and they sat together in the firefly-lit darkness, planning a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. The proposal, when it came 6 months later, was quintessentially Victoria, practical, thoughtful, and completely unexpected. They were at the Fort Worth property for its grand reopening after renovations. The Art Deco department store had been transformed into a stunning boutique hotel, and the launch party was in full swing. Daniel had stepped away from the crowd to check on Emma, who was supposed to be with his mother in one of the suites. Instead, he found them both in the lobby, standing near the preserved terrazzo floor Victoria had shown him on his first visit to the property. Victoria was there too, kneeling beside Emma, who was holding a small velvet box. "What's going on?" Daniel asked. Emma ran over to him, practically vibrating with excitement. "Daddy, Victoria has a question for you. A really important question." His heart started pounding as Victoria stood and walked over, taking the box from Emma. "Daniel Hayes," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. 9 months ago, I walked into a restaurant and interrupted the worst date of your life. I offered you a job because I saw talent and character and resilience. What I didn't expect was to find someone who would completely transform my understanding of what a life could be." Around them, the party had gone quiet as people realized what was happening. "You taught me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that building a company and building a family aren't competing priorities but complementary ones, that love isn't weakness, it's the foundation everything else is built on. She opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band. You told me once that relationships are just another kind of work. You invest time, navigate obstacles, build something that matters. I want to keep doing that work with you, forever. Will you marry me? Daniel felt tears on his face, heard Emma's excited whisper of, "Say yes, Daddy," and saw his mother crying happy tears in the background. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "Yes, absolutely yes." Victoria slid the ring onto his finger, and he pulled her into a kiss while the crowd erupted in applause. Emma threw herself at both of them, and they ended up in a three-way hug in the middle of the beautifully restored lobby, surrounded by celebration. Later, after the party wound down and Emma had fallen asleep in their hotel room, Daniel and Victoria stood on the terrace overlooking downtown Fort Worth. "I can't believe you proposed to me," Daniel said. "Most men would be weird about that." "You're not most men, and I wanted you to know that I'm choosing this actively, not waiting for you to ask, not following traditional scripts, just choosing us. I would have asked eventually, you know. I know. But I didn't want to wait. I've spent too much of my life waiting for the right time. This is the right time. You're the right person. Why wait?" Daniel pulled her close, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever think about that night in October? What would have happened if Sarah had actually shown up?" "Sometimes. But mostly, I just feel grateful for every miscommunication and missed connection that led to us finding each other." She paused. "Although I should probably send Sarah a wedding invitation. It seems only fair." Daniel laughed. "That might be the most Victoria Langford thing you've ever said." "I contain multitudes," she said with mock seriousness, "professional ruthlessness and personal sentimentality. I'm very complex." "You're very perfect." "I'm very far from perfect, but I'm perfect for you. There's a difference." They stood together in the February night, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of failed plans and transformed that chance meeting into something neither could have imagined. The hotel behind them represented transformation and preservation, history and future existing in harmony, exactly what they'd built together. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony at the San Antonio property, where Daniel had first truly understood Victoria's vision. Emma was the flower girl, walking down the aisle with solemn importance. Daniel's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Riley was maid of honor and gave a speech about unlikely love stories and the importance of showing up even when you're terrified. Victoria wore an elegant cream suit rather than a traditional dress, because she was still Victoria Langford and traditional had never been her style. Daniel wore the navy blazer Rebecca had bought him years ago, honoring his past while stepping into his future. When they exchanged vows, Victoria spoke first, her voice steady and clear. "Daniel, you once told me that the night we met, the night you waited alone in a restaurant, was the moment everything in your life began to change. You were wrong. That was the moment everything in both our lives began to change. You taught me that transformation isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully yourself with someone who sees you completely. I promise to keep seeing you, keep choosing you, keep building this extraordinary life with you and Emma. Forever." Daniel's vows were shorter, his voice thick with emotion. "Victoria, when you walked into that restaurant, I thought you were interrupting my disaster. Turns out you were starting my future. You showed me that love doesn't have to be small or careful or safe. It can be bold and ambitious and exactly as demanding as we are. I promise to match your courage, challenge your ideas, and love you without asking you to be less than you are. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for choosing us." They kissed as husband and wife while Emma cheered and the small gathering of family and close friends applauded, and Daniel thought about how the worst moment of his life had somehow led to the best. 5 years after their wedding, Daniel stood in the same San Antonio property, now holding a 2-year-old son named Matthew, while 12-year-old Emma gave Victoria detailed notes on the hotel's updated branding materials. Victoria listened with complete seriousness to Emma's critiques, which were surprisingly sophisticated for a preteen. The company had expanded to 37 properties across 5 states. Daniel had long since transitioned from employee to creative partner, working alongside Victoria to maintain the brand's integrity while scaling growth. They'd learned to balance work and family, ambition and presence, individual dreams and shared goals. It wasn't always easy. Victoria still worked too much sometimes. Daniel still struggled with anxiety about being enough. As a father, as a partner, as a creative leader, Emma navigated adolescence with the occasional drama. Matthew was firmly in his terrible twos, but they'd built something real and lasting, a family that encompassed biological and chosen connections, a business that reflected their shared values, a life that honored both ambition and love. That evening, after the property tour, they had dinner at the hotel restaurant. Emma was showing Matthew how to build structures with breadsticks while Victoria reviewed something on her tablet and Daniel read through website analytics. "We're working at dinner," Victoria observed. "That's probably bad." "Terrible," Daniel agreed, not looking up from his screen. "We should stop." "We absolutely should." Neither of them stopped. Emma rolled her eyes with preteen exasperation. "You guys are so weird. Normal parents don't work on vacation." "We're not on vacation," Victoria said. "We're on a property inspection that happens to include you and Matthew." "See? Weird." But Emma was smiling, comfortable in the chaos of their unusual family. Later, after the kids were asleep in the adjoining suite, Daniel and Victoria sat on their private terrace, looking out at the San Antonio River, just as they had on the night of the rebrand launch 5 years earlier. "Do you ever miss it?" Victoria asked. "The simplicity of life before all this? Just you and Emma? No corporate complications? No constant juggling?" Daniel considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity, but I don't miss the loneliness. The feeling that I was just surviving rather than actually living." He took her hand. "This is messy and complicated and sometimes overwhelming. But it's a life, Victoria, a real life, with all the beautiful chaos that implies." "I love you," she said quietly. "I know I don't say it enough, buried in work and logistics and everything else, but I do. You and Emma and Matthew, you're everything that matters." "I love you too, even when you're reviewing contracts at dinner." She smiled. "Especially then, probably. You love my workaholism. I love that you care so deeply about what you build, the properties, the company, our family. You don't do anything halfway." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the city and the river washing over them. Somewhere in the distance, a musician played guitar, the melody drifting through the warm Texas night. Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a humiliated single father sitting alone in a restaurant to a man surrounded by family and purpose and love. He thought about Victoria showing up that night, about every decision and conversation and moment that had led them to this terrace, this life, this extraordinary, ordinary evening. "Do you ever think about Sarah?" Victoria asked, as if reading his thoughts. "Wonder what happened to her?" "Actually, I do know. Marcus mentioned she's engaged to someone from her therapy group. They bonded over managing anxiety together. It sounds healthy." "Good for her. I'm glad she found someone." Victoria paused. "Although I'm more glad she didn't show up that night. Selfish of me, but true." "Not selfish, just honest." Daniel pulled her closer. "Everything that matters in my life came from that night. You, this family we've built, the work we do together. If she'd shown up, I'd have a completely different life. Probably fine, probably decent, but not this. Never this." "Do you believe in fate?" Victoria asked. "That we were somehow meant to find each other?" "I believe in choices. You chose to show up at that restaurant when you didn't have to. I chose to answer your call that midnight about El Paso. We kept choosing each other over and over. That's not fate. That's better than fate. That's intentional." Victoria turned to kiss him, and in that moment, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Daniel felt complete in a way he'd stopped believing was possible after Rebecca died. The night was warm, the river flowing below, the city alive around them. Inside the hotel suite, their children slept peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Matthew's boundless toddler energy, Emma's evolving preteen complexity, the endless demands of running a growing company. But tonight, there was just this. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd built a love as ambitious and transformative as the buildings they restored together. Sometimes the best stories really do start with the wrong plan and the right person walking through the door at exactly the right time. Sometimes disaster is just the beginning of something extraordinary. Sometimes sitting alone in a restaurant, waiting for someone who never arrives, is actually the moment everything changes. Daniel had learned that the hard way. But looking at Victoria, at the life they'd created, at the future still unfolding before them, he wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that had brought them here. Not one moment. Not even the waiting. Especially not the waiting. Because the waiting had led to this. And this was everything.